war zones, volcanic islands filled with toxic gases, and indigenous people who will kill you the moment you step foot on a beach. They're not exactly perfect selfie spots for your Instagram feed. These are 50 places no one is allowed to travel to, even if you tried. Starting us off with number 50. North Sentinel Island. There's an island in the Indian Ocean that's much more exotic than Tahiti, because no one is allowed there. This is North Sentinel Island. Get within a 3-mile or 5-kilometer radius, and the Indian authorities will prosecute you. If you do get on the island, the uncontacted indigenous people there will kill you if they can. An American missionary, John Chow, tried to go there in 2018, and it was the last trip he ever took. Number 49. Nicobar Islands. A quick boat journey south of North Sentinel will bring you to India's Nicobar Islands. Aside from a few select places, these islands are forbidden too, for the same reason. The Indian government wants to protect the fragile environment and indigenous inhabitants. If you don't have a special pass, you're not getting in without consequences. Number 48. Vale do Javari. Located along the Amazon, Vale do Javari in western Brazil is huge, almost the size of Maine. And it's completely sealed off, dedicated to protecting the indigenous people that live there. You will be prosecuted if you go, and the local tribes are known to shoot poison-tipped arrows at intruders. If you ask me, that's not worth the chance. Number 47. Yanomami Indigenous Territory. Brazil has another closed-off area, the Yanomami Indigenous Territory in Amazonas, covering almost 24.7 million acres, or about 10 million hectares. 30,000 Yanomami people live here, and the territory overlaps with Venezuela, where some of them remain completely uncontacted. Illegal miners have come here in recent years looking for gold and other valuables, and Brazil responded with armed force. The miners introduced diseases and brought environmental disruption that have proven unkind to the locals. The Brazilian government will prosecute you if it thinks you're doing the same thing. Number 46. Chiribiquete National Park. Relatively close by is Colombia's Chiribiquete National Park. It's been protected since 1989 and is now the world's largest tropical rainforest park. Aside from its picturesque natural wonders, aerial surveillance revealed as many as 3 uncontacted indigenous tribes. But don't try to be the one to talk to them. In fact, don't go to the park at all without special permission. Only flyovers are permitted for the general public. Number 45. Snake Island. Snake Island, located off the coast of southern Brazil, is patrolled by the Brazilian Navy to keep people out. Why? Well, that's because it's densely populated by endangered golden lancehead snakes that happen to be highly venomous. Locals say there's 1 snake for every square meter or 10 square feet on the island. That means every step you take risks a poison bite. Number 44. Bouvet Island. Lying 1,100 miles or 1,700 kilometers off the coast of Antarctica, Bouvet Island is the most remote in the world, and it's controlled by Norway, of all countries. You can't travel there because it's designated as a nature preserve. Even if you could, there's no safe place for you to land, much less an airport. Number 43. Surtsey. There's another island on the opposite side of the Atlantic if you're still willing to put up with the cold. It's Surtsey Island off southern Iceland, and it's new. It surfaced during an eruption between 1963 and 1967. It's less than a square mile, 2.5 square kilometers in size, and strictly reserved for geological research. You can only see it from the sky or on a distant boat. Number 42. Svalbard Global Seed Vault. Tucked away in the icy wilderness of the Svalbard archipelago lies the Global Seed Vault, a doomsday bunker holding over 1.3 million seed samples. It's humanity's backup plan if the world goes full apocalypse. But don't get any ideas about raiding it for rare kale. Even if you make it past the snow and ice, there are armed guards keeping watch. Number 41. Iriomote Ishigaki National Park. Japan has plenty of warm and visitor-friendly islands, but the ones that make up Iriomote Ishigaki National Park, 745 miles or 1,200 kilometers south of Kagoshima, aren't among them. This place is home to the critically endangered Iriomote cat, and it's closed to protect its fragile ecosystem. Number 40. Albatross Island. Australia is always a nice place to visit, but there are some peculiar places. One of them is Albatross Island, a 44-acre, 18-hectare sanctuary for 10,000 pairs of shy albatross that lies between northwest Tasmania and King Island. There are also seals, penguins, and skinks. It sounds like a nice place for some pictures, but that's exactly why the island is off-limits. It's all to protect that ecosystem. Number 39. Heard Island. There's another wildlife sanctuary in Australia, Heard Island in the Southern Ocean, another one of the most remote places in the world. It's only inhabited by penguins that, well, as of 2025, are subject to a 10% tariff to the US government. Its distance from civilization and its harsh weather make it a hard place to get to, and only limited fishing nearby is allowed. Number 38. McDonald Islands. Similar to Heard Island are Australia's McDonald Islands. They're too remote to be safe, volcanic activity can make them dangerous, and they're a dedicated marine reserve. They're listed as an IUCN Category 1 area, which means all visitors are banned except for select scientific researchers, which probably isn't you. Number 37. Antipodes Islands. If remote islands at the end of the world are your thing, then you will like the Antipodes Islands. Just 530 miles or 850 kilometers southeast of Stewart Island. But if you can get down there, you'd be in legal jeopardy, since the islands are designated nature reserves. The government of New Zealand is judicious in granting permits for scientific research. There have been shipwrecks, though. Number 36. Chañaral Island. Chañaral Island is 4 miles, 6.5 kilometers off the coast of northern Chile, and it's the world's largest colony of Humboldt penguins. That's also why it's forbidden to tourists. Turns out that travelers disrupted the penguins' breeding patterns and introduced pathogens. Chilean law enforcement conducts regular patrols to keep boats away, so even if you got through once, you'd still need to dodge them again to get back safely. Number 35. Farallon Islands. 30 miles, 48 kilometers off the coast of California near San Francisco are the Farallon Islands. This place is a national wildlife refuge, hosting seabirds like the tufted puffin and black-footed albatross. And there are dolphins, sea lions, whales, and great white sharks. No boats land on the islands, so if you're willing to brave swimming with the sharks, just know that a steep, rocky shoreline will be waiting for you, along with all the legal penalties of violating a national wildlife refuge. Number 34. Navassa Island. The United States has declared another island as a wildlife refuge, though one wonders if this decision was more political than scientific. This is Navassa Island, 40 miles, 64 kilometers south of Haiti, which claims it as its territory. Haiti's claim supposedly dates back to the 1697 Treaty of Ryswick. Oddly enough, the United States also claims the island as its own as part of the 1856 Guano Islands Act, which allowed American citizens to take ownership of uninhabited islands for development under the American flag. No one is there today, but the US government declared the island and its waters as Navassa National Wildlife Refuge. Only scientific visitors with special permissions are allowed on it. Number 33. Niihau. Hawaii is known for its pleasant weather and social media bragging rights, but don't go to the westernmost main island. Niihau, privately owned by the Robinson family since 1864, is dedicated to preserving the native Hawaiian culture of its residents. Only their relatives and members of the US military doing their official duties are allowed to access the island freely. You can fly over it for $440 and visit designated beaches if you're willing to pay even more. But that's all. Don't think of interacting with any of the people. Trespassers will be prosecuted. Number 32. North Brother Island. North Brother Island is situated in New York's East River, between the Bronx and the infamous Rikers. It used to be inhabited, but was turned into a tuberculosis sanitarium. Then it became a rehab center for teenage drug addicts before closing in 1964. It's been left to the birds ever since. The buildings are in extreme disrepair, and New York City's Parks Department won't let anyone in except 4 scientific researchers per year between the fall and winter months. Number 31. Plum Island. Plum Island in Suffolk County, New York, was once inhabited, but now it's completely under the US government's control. It once had a highly secure scientific facility dedicated to researching bioweapons. But given how close it is to such a dense population center, that wasn't such a great idea. It was then devoted to researching animal-borne illnesses. The facility finally closed down in 2024, and the feds wanted to sell the island in anticipation of that, but 2020's CARES Act prevents it. That means you're still forbidden from going there, and no one really knows what'll happen next. Number 30. Robbins Island. There's another island in Suffolk County. It's privately owned Robbins Island, owned by a financier named Louis Bacon, who bought it in 1993 for $11 million. He's turned it into a nature park, one with a huge population of mud turtles. It's inaccessible for the general public, though. Bacon is serious about protecting its natural habitat. Trespassers, you guessed it, will be prosecuted. Number 29. Fort Carroll. Further down the Atlantic coastline, you'll find Fort Carroll in Maryland. It's a 3.4-acre, 1.5-hectare artificial island built in 1848 to defend Baltimore and its strategic harbor should the Royal Navy ever decide to visit again like it did during the War of 1812. That never happened, and after 80 years of disuse, the Army abandoned it in 1921. A prominent Baltimore attorney bought it for $10,000 in 1958 and planned to turn it into a casino, but that never really happened either. It's still private property though, and a protected marine area. No one is allowed, although some visitors have made it at the risk of prosecution. They took pictures of camping out in the night in the abandoned fort, and it was sorta spooky. Number 28. Morgan Island. Morgan Island in Beaufort County, South Carolina, was uninhabited until 1979, when the local authorities offered it as a colony for 1,400 herpes B-infected rhesus monkeys from Puerto Rico. The colony quickly thrived. 10 years later, there were over 4,000 monkeys. To keep both people and monkeys safe, South Carolina law forbids you from going to the island. Only select scientists from the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases can go. Number 27. Poveglia. Poveglia in Venice was once a thriving town, before people fled during wartime in the late 14th century. In 1793, it became a place to quarantine plague patients, 100,000 of which died. It became a mental hospital in 1922. That closed in 1968, and the island's been abandoned since. But it's reportedly haunted, and trespassers have gone there to look for ghosts. Local authorities have increased patrols to keep them out. Number 26. Lascaux Cave. Lascaux Cave is home to 21,000-year-old cave paintings, but unfortunately, the caves have been closed to the general public since 1963. This is to prevent deterioration of the paintings. Replicas are available, but if you try to see the originals, you'll be in big legal trouble. Number 25. Uluru. You've probably heard of Uluru, also called Ayers Rock in the south of Australia's Northern Territory. This sandstone monolith is part of the religious beliefs of the Angangu people, the indigenous owners of the land, and because of this, climbing Uluru has been banned since 2019. Doing so will get you prosecuted under Australia's Environment Protection and Biodiversity Conservation Act. But what about another elevated place? A pyramid, perhaps? Number 24. Lintong District. In the Lintong District in northwest China, there's a pyramid, and beneath it lies one of the world's greatest archaeological discoveries. It's the mausoleum of Qin Shi Huang, China's first emperor, sprawled out over 22 square miles, 57 square kilometers. It's still mostly unexcavated, but the famous terracotta warriors aren't the only ones protecting their deceased lord. The Chinese government has placed the tomb under strict guard. Those are not people you want to mess with. Number 23. Tibet. Elsewhere, controversially under Chinese control, is Tibet. Foreigners can go there, but only through authorized travel agencies under a carefully organized tour. Journalists and diplomats will need additional approval from China's Foreign Affairs Office. There are times when no one is allowed in, period. All of Tibet is closed for at least 1 month of the year. So again, unless you want to test the Chinese authorities, think twice about heading there. Number 22. Mezhgorya. There's an entire town that's permanently closed to visitors on the enormous Eurasian landmass. It's Mezhgorya in the Republic of Bashkortostan, Russia. Population about 17,000 as of the 2010 census. No one else is allowed. Some people call it Russia's Area 51, which more on that place later. The town was only founded in the 1970s, and satellite images reveal major activity ever since. The Russian government has called it a food storage area, a bunker for leaders, and other things. Most people think it hosts nuclear missiles. Few know what it really is, and you likely won't be the one to find out unless your idea is to get put in a glass box and held for ransom, along with other high-profile prisoners in Russia. Number 21. Metro 2. Moscow might be a safer place to visit, and much less remote. And it turns out that there's a hidden curiosity that may be worth exploring. There's a parallel subway system beneath its streets, the so-called Metro 2 or D6. Accounts reveal that Joseph Stalin started construction of it when the Cold War kicked into gear, trying to ensure the government survived a nuclear attack. The tunnels connect two key buildings, provide an escape from the city itself, and have built-in bunkers just in case. The Russian government still denies its existence though, and unless you're willing to test it, it's probably better to leave these things alone. There are other exclusion zones though, the result of both natural and man-made disasters. Seeking a thrill in any of them probably isn't a good idea. Number 20. Chernobyl. Far to the south of Moscow lies Chernobyl. This is one of the most forbidden places in the world for a good reason. It suffered the world's worst nuclear accident in 1986, and a 19-mile, 31-kilometer radius around the site is gradually being reclaimed by nature. It'll be uninhabitable by humans for at least another 20,000 years. Number 19. Centralia. America sort of has its own Chernobyl. Centralia, Pennsylvania. Population 5. It was a mining town, but an underground coal fire broke out there in 1962. No one really knows how, but it's still burning and will for about 250 years. The town was abandoned, the land seized through eminent domain, and the zip code revoked in 2002. In 2013, remaining residents reached an agreement that allowed them to stay and receive a $218,000 settlement. But once they die, their homes go to the state. If you want to see them, know that you'll risk sinkholes and possible lethal levels of carbon monoxide coming out of the ground. Number 18. Plymouth. Plymouth was once the capital of the British Overseas Territory of Montserrat, but then the Soufriere Hills volcano became active in 1995. Plymouth became a modern Pompeii and needed to be abandoned. Most of the islands did, actually. The eruption stopped, but there's still an exclusion zone near Plymouth due to potential hazardous volcanism. Number 17. Zone Rouge. France has an exclusion zone that's much larger than any of the ones we previously mentioned. This is the Zone Rouge in northeastern France. Once inhabited, it had the misfortune to become a major battleground in World War I and was sealed off afterward. It spreads over 460 square miles, just under 1,200 square kilometers, centered around the most intense parts of the infamous Battle of Verdun in 1916. Parts of it are so infested with toxic chemicals that nothing lives there anymore, with a surface that some accounts say resembles the soil of Venus. If you're willing to risk that, you should know that millions of the shells fired here were duds, so there's unexploded ordnance lying everywhere. It's estimated that it will take 700 years for the area to be livable again. Number 16. Barren Island. Barren Island is home to India's only active volcano. Like Montserrat, there was a huge eruption in 1991 that devastated the island. Fortunately, no one lived there, but it was lethal to animals. Since then, the government has banned tourists to protect the ecosystem. The best you'll be able to do is take some pictures in the distance on a boat ride. Number 15. Pangong Tso Lake. Pangong Tso Lake in Ladakh has a unique ability. It changes colors from blue to green to red depending on the conditions. This sounds nice, but beware. The highly disputed border between India and China passes right through it. Tourists can only go to a part of it. You will need a special interline permit to go, there's little accommodation, and you might find yourself in the middle of a border clash. Number 14. Solamo Lake. Solamo Lake in Sikkim is listed as Instagram-worthy on travel sites, and it's one of the highest lakes in the world, a staggering 16,700 feet, just over 5,000 meters above sea level. The problem? It's also disputed with China. Only the Indian Army and local police can go there without a special permit that's pretty hard to get. Number 13. Aksai Chin. Aksai Chin is probably the most forbidden place in all of India, or China for that matter. Like the previous two locations, it's right on the border of the two countries. In fact, no one really knows what the border is, so there was a violent clash here in June of 2020 that saw 20 Indian and 4 Chinese soldiers die. It's too bad. There are some gorgeous salt lakes and scenic cold deserts here, but it's understandably off limits to all non-military personnel. Number 12. Mount Kanchenjunga. Mount Kanchenjunga in India is the world's 3rd tallest peak. It's on the border between India and Nepal, but if you're looking to make this extremely challenging climb from the Indian side, don't. The government closed it in 2000 to meet the concerns of the local Buddhist community, who thought that foreign climbers were desecrating the mountain. Number 11. Gangkhar Punsum. Gangkhar Punsum is the tallest peak in Bhutan. With a peak of 9,800 feet, or about 3,000 meters, it's actually the highest unclimbed mountain in the world, and no one is allowed to make the attempt. The government banned climbing in 2003 due to safety concerns and, like India, to respect the locals' religious beliefs. Bhutan regulates the entry of foreigners into its borders, so even getting close to the mountain is challenging enough. Then you need to ask yourself if you're willing to test Bhutan's justice system or risk your life trying to do what no one has done before, because there's not much infrastructure to rescue you if you get stranded. Number 10. Cyprus. Cyprus in the Mediterranean is one of the most heavily disputed places in the world, divided since 1974 between the Turkish north and Greek south. A UN buffer zone sits across the northern part of the island to make that clear. Aside from a few special villages, civilians need a special permit from the UN to enter areas in the buffer zone. These areas have become no man's land, with abandoned villages deteriorating in the elements. Unless you're looking for ghost towns, it's probably not a good idea. Number 9. Mount Athos. One of the world's strangest travel restrictions comes at Mount Athos in Greece. This place is autonomous, run by a council of the 20 Orthodox Christian monasteries on it, the oldest of which dates to 963. Only a limited number of permits are issued every year, and none of them go to women. Women aren't even allowed to approach the coast. It all dates to an 11th century rule to promote celibacy. There were few exceptions. One applies to Helena of Bulgaria, who fled there during the Black Death, but she was not allowed to touch the ground. Servants carried her everywhere in a carriage. In fact, the rule is so strict that female animals aren't even allowed, which means eggs and cheese, they need to be imported. Number 8. Fort Knox. Fort Knox is spread out over 109,000 acres, 4,400 hectares in parts of Bullitt, Hardin, and Meade counties in Kentucky. Non-military personnel are strictly forbidden. Rumor has it that the fences are electrified with laser-activated machine guns, landmines, and radar that can track your every move. And you'll see the manned outposts at every one of the building's corners. Number 7. Mount Weather Emergency Operations Center. Around 50 miles, 80 kilometers from Washington, D.C., in Virginia's Blue Ridge Mountains, accessible by State Route 601, is another of the world's most secure bases. This is the Mount Weather Emergency Operations Center. Once a weather station, it's much bigger now, 434 acres, 176 hectares topside where FEMA uses it. But there's much more. This facility is built for the federal government to survive a nuclear attack. Rumors say there's a 600,000 square foot, 55,741 square meter bunker complex with cutting-edge tech below. It's even been designated as a storage site for valuable paintings if the worst ever comes. Number 6. The Woomera Test Range. Created by the Australian military after World War II to test missiles, Woomera Test Range is huge, covering almost 47,000 square miles, 122 square kilometers. But there are conservation areas and privately owned mines there too. You can only go to a few areas, like the village of Woomera itself, along an authorized route. You'll need a special permit for anywhere else, and there are times when no permits are issued at all. Number 5. Pine Gap. There is an even more secret place in Australia. This is Pine Gap in the Northern Territory, 11 miles 18 kilometers southwest of the town of Alice Springs. It's a joint operation between Australia and the United States, and it's used to collect sensitive intelligence, including geolocation data for drone strikes and special operations. It's highly controversial and has seen its share of protests. Number 4. RAF Menwith Hill. The 605-acre, 245-hectare RAF Menwith Hill base near Harrogate in North Yorkshire, England, is notable for its 37 huge golf ball domes. These are no toys, though. It's a joint UK-US base built in the 1950s to collect intelligence. Leaked documents from Edward Snowden revealed its vital role in eliminating targets in the Middle East. The base is a self-contained community, including a general store, a bar, and a pool hall. There were even schools for the personnel's children until 2015. Just don't think about going. Trespassers will pay a $6,600 fine and spend 51 weeks in prison. Number 3. Diego Garcia. Diego Garcia is one of the world's most remote islands, and its white sand beaches and crystal blue waters are something out of a dream. But the place has a dark history, and if you go there, you'll be in real trouble. In the 1960s, the British government deported its inhabitants to make way for a joint military base. Because of its location in the Indian Ocean that's close to East Africa, the Middle East, and Southeast Asia, it's vital to America's power projection strategy. That means no visitors are allowed. Get within 3 nautical miles, 5.5 kilometers, and you'll wish you hadn't. After all, it's not like you can hide. Approaching somewhere that remote tends to leave you open to surveillance. Number 2. Cheyenne Mountain. You've seen the world's most secure island, now for the most secure mountain. It's Cheyenne Mountain in Colorado. This might be the most survivable base in the world, with huge blast doors, long tunnels, and even its own industrial reservoir, all under 2,000 feet or 600 meters of rock. This place was designed to survive a nuclear attack and protect all the people inside. It's virtually impossible you'd get in undetected, and if you did, you'd be charged with some serious crimes. And finally, number 1, Area 51. No list of forbidden places would be complete without Nevada's Area 51 near Groom Lake, 83 miles, 134 kilometers from Las Vegas. It was built in 1955, initially to test spy planes, 8 years after the Roswell incident. It became more famous in the 1980s when alleged insider reports said there were alien spacecraft and experiments on weather-altering weapon systems. Even without those claims, the base was used to test highly secretive toys like the F-117 Nighthawk. It's run jointly by the USAF and CIA, and wasn't publicly acknowledged until June of 2013. Signs advise would-be trespassers that they may be subject to lethal force, and in 2019, a man was shot dead for trying to enter without permission, carrying something that looked like it could be an explosive. Thanks for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you want to see more videos like this, then please consider subscribing and turn on notifications. It really does make a difference. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time on MatPack. Dictators banning laughter, lakes that can burn your skin, and modern-day piracy. And that's just the beginning. Get ready, because these are 50 of the most dangerous places on Earth. Starting off with number 50, North Korea. Okay, North Korea isn't high on bucket list destinations. After all, if you go, you're begging to be detained and used as an object of propaganda. It's so dangerous that your passport isn't even valid to travel there. You'll need to get a special passport to visit Pyongyang, and it's probably for the best. Kim Jong-un is so tyrannical that he banned laughing for 11 days during the anniversary of his father's death. Number 49, Afghanistan. There are very obvious reasons not to travel to Afghanistan. The place is run by religious fanatics who don't like to laugh, and there's the constant threat of war and terrorism. That's why the State Department has it on its do not travel list, because the last thing you'd want to happen is to see yourself kidnapped or wrongfully detained by the Taliban. Number 48, India. India seems like it should be safer, but that depends on where you are. The State Department advises tourists to exercise increased caution throughout the country and to not travel there alone. That goes double for women, who are often subjected to verbal and physical harassment. The border with Pakistan, Jammu, Kashmir, Manipur, and portions of Central and East India are all on the State Department's Do Not Travel list. Violent conflict and elevated crime are constant threats. If you're determined to go, maybe just stick to the Taj Mahal. Number 47. Russia. Across the Eurasian landmass lies Russia, a place full of natural and man-made beauty. Unfortunately, it's not a good idea to see those things today. Things have changed dramatically since Vladimir Putin decided to conduct a special operation and invade Ukraine. The State Department puts the entire country on its Do Not Travel list. Foreigners face high risks of wrongful detention. You probably don't want to become one of those people put on a show trial behind a glass case. Number 46. Ukraine. Ukraine isn't an ideal place to travel today either, but the war will end eventually. Before you bolt to become one of those first post-war travelers and see the state of the country, consider this. Ukraine now has more landmines than any other country. Then there's the millions of unexploded artillery shells and cluster bomblets lurking in its soil. These explosives stretch over a swath of the country as big as Florida. Be careful if you decide to go even decades from now, because these things can last for a really long time. Number 45. France and Belgium's Western Front. During World War I, the Western Front stretched across France and Belgium, where over 1 billion explosive rounds were fired, and up to 30% of them never detonated. In France alone, 900 tons, 816,000 kilos of unexploded ordnance are still recovered every year in what's known as the Iron Harvest. More than 600 workers have lost their lives trying to clean it up. Near Ypres in Belgium, you might even stumble across a crusted-over gas shell, still deadly after more than a century. It might sound exciting, but trust us, these fields are the last places you want to explore alone. Number 44. Egypt. Egypt has more landmines than any other country, with almost 23 million buried in its soil. World War II and repeat wars with Israel up to 1973 have left blankets of these hard-to-find anti-tank mines in the Western and Sinai deserts. They've already killed or injured thousands, with more still to be discovered. And Egypt isn't the tourist trap that's plagued with mines. Number 43. Cambodia. Angkor Wat in Cambodia is one of the world's most famous structures, but this country only recently emerged from a pretty dark history. It's seen war and the tyranny of regimes like the Khmer Rouge, all of which laid down landmines, around 8 to 10 million of them. Over 40,000 Cambodians suffered amputations from these mines between 1979, when the Vietnamese overthrew the Khmer Rouge, and 1999. That meant 40 victims per week. Number 42. Laos. The most heavily bombed place in the world isn't anywhere that first comes to mind. Maybe you're one of the growing number of tourists interested in a trip to Laos, which the European Council on Trade and Tourism named one of the best places for its architecture and history. But Laos was part of the Ho Chi Minh Trail in the Vietnam War, and the US military dropped over 270 million cluster bomblets all through it between 1964 and 1973. 80 million of them failed to explode on impact. They're still killing or maiming people. So if you plan on going to Laos, walking through an unguided area isn't a good idea for that live stream you have planned. Mines and unexploded bombs make the past a still present danger. Unfortunately, many other countries are suffering much more active dangers from criminals running amok. Number 41. Venezuela. Venezuela's murder rate hit a high of 90 per 100,000 in 2015. That's fortunately dropped to 26.2 in 2024, but that's still one of the world's highest, and the danger is greater than that. The country is a corrupt dictatorship under Nicolas Maduro, with arbitrary enforcement of local laws and a high risk of wrongful detentions. That's why the State Department outright advises Americans to not travel to it. Number 40. Mexico. Mexico's cartels have become so powerful that they're now using improvised landmines. The cartels have made Mexico the 5th most violent country in the world, with 24.9 murders per 100,000 people in 2023. So if you're going to Mexico, it's best to stick to the major tourist areas and avoid the places the US State Department issues advisories on. This includes Mexico City, which travelers are told to exercise caution in. Number 39. Honduras. Honduras' homicide rate is even higher than Mexico's, at 31.4 per 100,000. That's why the US State Department lists the entire country at level 3. The urge to exercise caution comes from the high violent crime rate and local authorities often lacking the resources to deal with it. If you do want to go there so you can say you've visited a place of danger, it's best to avoid demonstrations, displaying signs of wealth, and generally going out at night. Number 38. South Africa. South Africa is the most dangerous country on the African continent, with a homicide rate of 45.5 in 2023. The State Department doesn't advise to avoid traveling there, but it does recommend elevated caution. It would also be best for you to stick to major highways, avoid being alone after dark, or flaunting your wealth. It's also advised to stay away from obscure townships. Number 37. Ecuador. Ecuador is the second most violent country in the world, at 45.7 homicides per 100,000. The State Department says it's best to exercise elevated caution here. Many parts of the country should be avoided entirely due to widespread crime. These places include the cities of Quevedo, Quinsaloma, and Pueblo Viejo in the province of Los Rios and Esmeraldas, and one more city that we'll mention shortly. Sure, Ecuador's northwest coast might be picturesque, but crime is high and law enforcement lacks resources. Keep that in mind before you want to get those shots of Las Palmas and brag about how you went to one of the world's most dangerous beaches. Number 36. Jamaica. In 2023, Jamaica was the world's homicide capital, with 49.3 murders per 100,000 people. That's why it's been listed as a place to reconsider traveling to. Tourist areas are safer than other parts of the country, but even in gated resorts, the State Department warns about incidents of armed robbery and sexual assault, with slow law enforcement response times and cases rarely referred for prosecution. Maybe you want to go into the less traveled areas to say you risked it, but Washington says it's not a good idea. Number 35. Haiti. Haiti's homicide rate is 41.1 per 100,000. Granted, that's lower than Ecuador or Jamaica, but the State Department outright lists the entire country as do not travel. Recent political turmoil that toppled the government and an already high crime rate have combined to make it so dangerous that even personnel from the US government are banned from traveling anywhere at night or going to a bank. And if you want to visit the border with the Dominican Republic, that's not a good idea either. It's a hotspot for kidnapping. Number 34. Kansas City, United States. After hearing about all these travel advisories, you might think you want to stay in the United States. But America is a much more violent country compared to its developed peers, at 5.76 homicides per 100,000. This is where it helps to remember that crime isn't uniform. Some places are more dangerous than others, that skew the national average of every country. Kansas City, Missouri is one of those places for the US, with a rate of just over 1,700 violent felonies per 100,000 in 2019. Number 33. Detroit, United States. Detroit is another famous city. Unfortunately, the home of the American auto industry has fallen on tough times. Its population fell by 63% between 1950 and 2015, and it had almost 2,000 violent felonies per 100,000 by 2019. So if you want to see the history of the American automobile, just remember to exercise elevated caution. But the crime capital of the US is far to the south. Number 32. Memphis, Tennessee, USA. Memphis is known for the likes of Elvis and Johnny Cash, but there's a darker side to the city. It had 63 homicides per 100,000 residents in 2023. If you go, you have a 1 in 49 chance of being a victim of violent crime, and cuts to police funding haven't helped. So while the State Department won't say anything about it, just be sure about where you're traveling if you want to pay homage to the home of some of the greatest artists in blues and rock. There are far more dangerous cities abroad, and you might not be surprised to find them in countries you've already heard us mention. Number 31. Nelson Mandela Bay, South Africa. Nelson Mandela Bay is the most dangerous city in Africa, with a murder rate of 78.3 per 100,000 people in 2024. High unemployment, widespread poverty, and easy access to firearms fuel the presence of criminal groups that are challenging for law enforcement to suppress. And it gets worse across the Atlantic Ocean. Number 30. Guayaquil, Ecuador. Guayaquil, Ecuador's largest city, has a murder rate of 88.8 per 100,000 people. Organized criminal organizations compete for drug trafficking routes here, and the violence has spilled out. Although local law enforcement has intensified its effort against these criminals, fundamental conditions like widespread poverty and lack of resources for police have allowed the gangs to make a good living anyway. Number 29. Caracas, Venezuela. The State Department already told you to avoid Venezuela, but the Caracas area is especially one to steer clear of. There were 90 homicides per 100,000 people here in 2022. The rate soared as gangs and Maduro's security forces had a turf war for the city's neighborhoods. Let's just say you wouldn't want to run into either one. Number 28. Port-au-Prince, Haiti. Across the Caribbean, Port-au-Prince skews Haiti's national homicide rate into the stratosphere. With 117.2 murders per 100,000 people, it's one of the 3 most dangerous cities in the world. Armed gangs fight for control of territory here, with kidnappings and sexual violence also far too common. Local authorities are handicapped by political turmoil, so this is an area that's probably worth avoiding. Number 27. Colima, Mexico. Of the 10 most dangerous cities in the world, 7 of them are in Mexico, and one stands out even by their standards. It's Colima, in the state of the same name. The murder rate here is 140.3 per 100,000 in 2024. Colima is along a major narcotics trade route, where the stuff gets imported into the country. It's also in the territory of the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, one of the most powerful and dangerous gangs in Mexico. It's a cartel superpower, capable of fighting wars against multiple rivals at once and the Mexican government. But sometimes it's not the crime that makes a city dangerous. Number 26. Lahore, Pakistan. Check the live rankings in the World Air Quality Index, and you're sure to find Lahore, Pakistan as one of the most polluted cities in the world. That's because it's chopped down most of its trees to build roads for an increasing number of cars. Mix this with an energy grid that relies heavily on coal and dust from construction projects, and you get air that's often hazardous to human health. Not all dangers are man-made, though. There are plenty of natural wonders out there waiting to threaten you. Boiling heat, bitter cold, and much stranger things are out there, lying in wait if you're not careful. Number 25. The Danakil Desert. This is the Danakil Desert between Ethiopia, Eritrea, and Djibouti. Aside from a few Afar people that are brave enough to mine for salt, no one comes by these parts. If you mean to join them, just know that you're about to venture into the hottest place on Earth, which can reach up to temperatures of 131 degrees Fahrenheit, that's 55 Celsius. That's because this desert is a volcanic depression, with underground lava lakes that make the area reek of rotten eggs. The smell comes from sulfur, and there are far more toxic gases here. Maybe it shouldn't be surprising that the most famous resident is Lucy, a fossilized human ancestor that died over 3 million years ago. Number 24. Dallol, Ethiopia. There's a certain part of the Danakil Desert that was inhabited only by foreigners, because the locals, they knew better. The ruins of Dallol was where Italian and American companies mined potash. It was the hottest inhabited part of the world while they were there. The average temperature in Dallol is 94 degrees Fahrenheit, 34 degrees Celsius. You can only get there by off-road vehicles or camels, and they have to carry salt, not you. So be prepared to pay a lot of money to a guide if you want to visit this most extreme of ghost towns. Number 23. Lake Natron, Tanzania. Other parts of Africa are more hospitable, and there's some stunning lakes on the continent worth visiting. Lake Natron in Tanzania probably isn't one of them, though. This lake is one of the most alkaline places in the world, with pH levels that can go over 10 thanks to high concentrations of sodium carbonate and other minerals. That means the water can burn your skin and eyes if you come into contact with it. If that's not enough for you, the temperature rivals that of the Danakil Desert. Number 22. Oymyakon, Russia. Oymyakon in the Sakha Republic of Russia's Far East, the opposite of Dalol. Common high temperatures during the winter months are in the -30s and 40s Fahrenheit. Only the interior of Antarctica is similar. If you want to spend a winter here, you better be prepared. It's so cold that indoor plumbing freezes, so the 500 or so residents use outhouses. And don't go if you're a vegetarian. Crops can't grow here since the ground is frozen, so you'll need to rely on a meat-based diet. Number 21. Teresina, Brazil. Teresina, Brazil seems to be the opposite of Oymyakon. Average temperatures here reach 97 degrees Fahrenheit, 36 Celsius in the summer. But the real danger isn't the heat. Instead, you might have a better chance of being struck by lightning here than anywhere else. Tropical conditions make it the center of Brazil's flash lightning flatlands, the place with the world's third highest number of recorded yearly lightning strikes. If you're willing to risk that, you should be aware that it's also a crime haven, with 40.4 homicides per 100,000 people. Maybe you should get that lightning footage somewhere else. Number 20. Amazon, Brazil. If you're in Brazil and want to get away from the cities, you might fancy a journey through the Amazon, but maybe it's better to think again. Sure, the place has stunning natural beauty, but you had better be prepared to see it. Pack a lot of mosquito repellent, sleep in a mosquito net, and get your vaccinations: malaria, meningitis, rabies, and a lot more. If you're still okay with all these needles in your arm, you should be aware of the venomous snakes, other predators, and potential for floods and forest fires. If you're still willing to put up with all that, plus the enormous heat and humidity, don't go without an expert guide. The dangers in the Amazon are obvious, but sometimes places are dangerous precisely because the dangers aren't obvious. Number 19. Oklahoma City, USA. Consider Oklahoma City. It might not seem like a place of extremes, but the 680,000 residents live there in the knowledge that their home is at the center of Tornado Alley, the place where most of the world's tornadoes happen. Over 160 of them have hit Oklahoma City since records began in the 1890s. That's why most people have built shelters into their homes. Official shelters would just clog the roads with traffic in an emergency. Remember that if you're going there to chase a storm, especially in the spring. Number 18. Jakarta, Indonesia. Halfway around the world, you'll find Jakarta, Indonesia, with a population of 11.6 million. But this sprawling city has a huge vulnerability. Nearly half of it is below sea level, and it's sinking between 2 and 3 inches a year. Flooding happens pretty much every year now. That's why the city is building a huge seawall. Until then, it's best to avoid the more easily flooded northern part of town during bad weather, especially when you learn about the sewage system that can't cope with the water. Number 17. The Philippines. A little further north is the Philippines, and there's something peculiar about this country. It's in the Ring of Fire, a 25,000-mile, 40,000-kilometer long, 310-mile, 500-kilometer wide belt that almost surrounds the Pacific Ocean. The 4 biggest volcanic eruptions since the end of the last ice age have been here. The Filipino city of Legazpi is right along the ring, and Mount Mayon is partly within the city's borders. It's a popular tourist spot, and it's also a highly active volcano. Eruptions are so common that the city has no choice but to have elaborate evacuation plans. 16,000 residents were displaced just in June of 2023. Number 16. Tokyo, Japan. When you think of Tokyo, you might think of the word safe, but at some point, this place will be the most dangerous city in the world. There's something else about the Ring of Fire. 90% of the world's total earthquakes, and the biggest ones, happen here. That's why there's one in Tokyo almost every day. These are mostly small, but a 6.6 magnitude earthquake took place in 1894. When, not if, a bigger one hits, it will be devastating. You'll probably be fine for now, just remember that under your feet, disaster could strike at any time. Number 15. Cook Strait, New Zealand. The Cook Strait is the passage that separates the north and south of New Zealand's main islands, but it's only 14 miles, 22.5 kilometers wide at its narrowest point. That sounds like a lot, but the lay of the land makes this place a wind tunnel. Sometimes the wind can reach extremes of 150 miles an hour, 240 kilometers an hour. The wind and strong tides mean that there's little room for error here. Even experienced sailors have to keep a close eye on the weather conditions. One mistake can mean a meeting with the jagged mountains lining the shore. Number 14. Skeleton Coast, Namibia. Namibia's Skeleton Coast is pretty similar. There are over 500 shipwrecks here. A local park ranger documented 112 in just 6 years. It's often foggy, and Antarctic currents flow up, producing an energetic coast that can take you 125 miles 200 kilometers out if you're daring enough to risk a swim. It sounds like a surfer's dream, but you'll be sharing the waters with one more danger. There are a lot of sharks that look for the common marine mammal life there. Number 13. The Cape of Good Hope. The Cape of Good Hope is only slightly further south. It might be one of the world's most important shipping routes, but that doesn't mean it's safe. Waves of 16 feet, nearly 5 meters, are common here. You also have a good chance of running into an intense storm. There are at least 2,000 shipwrecks. Ever heard of the Flying Dutchman? That ghost ship is associated with this place due to its intense conditions. Number 12. The Southern Ocean. Go a little further south and you'll come across the Roaring Forties and Furious 50s. As most of the landmass is in the northern hemisphere, there's little land to slow the movement of the powerful currents here. The winds average a monthly speed of about 39 feet per second, 12 meters per second in the windiest parts. The combination whips up waves at an average of over 16 feet, or 5 meters. Number 11. Cape Horn. Cape Horn is where the Atlantic and the Pacific meet. Few sailors dare to go to this place they call a ship graveyard, or the world's largest natural obstacle course if they're in a better mood. High winds make for waves that can be almost 100 feet 30 meters high at maximum, with jagged cliffs that await ships that venture too far off course, something that's all too easy to do in the powerful currents here. No less a navigator than Sir Francis Drake had a close call at Cape Horn. If anything, he had a tougher time here than he did against the Spanish Armada. Number 10. The Bay of Biscay. The Spanish Armada needed to sail through the Bay of Biscay to reach England, and it had a lot of trouble. The strong waves strained the seams of the ships, and some of them were leaking before they even entered battle. You might think navigation has made progress since then, but these waters are still perilous. Strong winds and sudden storms pose constant dangers, especially between April and October. This is when gale-force winds and sudden storms combine with strong currents to tip ships over or send them into the rocky outcrops all over the place. Number 9. The Northwest Passage. No one actually succeeded in sailing from the Atlantic to the Pacific through the Northwest Passage until 1906, when Norway's Roald Amundsen did it. Even then, it took 3 years. Ice is still in both the northern and southern routes at all times of the year, with only narrow channels open at best. It might not be as treacherous as it was to those early explorers, but this is definitely not a journey you want to make without an experienced navigator. And even for them, it's a challenge. You might even run into hostile walruses or polar bears if you get stalled. Number 8. The Mozambique Channel. If ice isn't for you, but you still want a thrill, there's the Mozambique Channel on the other side of the world. Spanning between Mozambique and Madagascar, the channel's strong and warm current flows to the south. It creates unpredictable weather patterns and strong hurricanes, like Cyclone Idai in early 2019, one of the worst to affect Africa. And then there's something else you need to consider. An Islamist insurgency has flared up, which has threatened the ships in the channel. Drug smuggling has become big business. So if you're going there, extreme caution is warranted. Number 7. Somalia. Further north is Somalia, and you probably know what could be waiting for you there. Sure, piracy peaked in 2011, but Britain's Royal United Services Institute says the pirates were more active in 2024 than at any point in the previous 6 years, and Somali pirates operate far from their home waters. 33 incidents were reported in the first 3 months of 2024 alone. In January and March, Somali pirates boarded ships hundreds of miles off their coasts. Number 6. The Gulf of Aden. The Gulf of Aden has become one of the most dangerous places in the world for another reason. Houthi rebels in Yemen have fired on commercial shipping since November of 2023. And we're not talking with small arms or RPGs. We're talking about anti-ship missiles. Over 100 attacks were recorded by the end of 2024. Number 5. The Strait of Malacca. The Strait of Malacca is an even more important shipping route, with over 100,000 ships coming through in a year. But it's a narrow channel, spanning only 1.7 miles, 2.7 kilometers across at the shortest point. That means ships need to communicate very carefully with each other to avoid a collision. This part of the world is among the most heavily infested with pirates, even more than Somalia. It's a long stretch of territory, and law enforcement has meager resources to deal with the problems. Number 4. The Sunda Strait. On the western side of Sumatra is the Sunda Strait. It's 15 miles, 24 kilometers wide at its narrowest point, and only 65 feet, 20 meters deep at its minimum in the eastern part. The western part is a lot deeper though, and the sudden change can make for pretty tricky situations. Also, you might get hit with a freak tsunami, like the one that came in 2018 with no warning. After that, the Indonesian government advises all ships to avoid this strait, and the region's dangers don't end there. Number 3. The South China Sea. Navigating the South China Sea needs to be handled with caution. There are many small islands and reefs you'll need to be aware of, and typhoons are frequent, over 20 per year in these confined waters. Then there's the political tension. With China building fortified islands and clashing with its neighbors over valuable real estate like the Spratly Islands, it might be best for you to avoid certain areas. Chinese and Filipino vessels in particular have had hostile encounters more frequently in the past 2 years, and you might get too close to a freedom of navigation operation from the US Navy if you go in unprepared. Number 2. The Black Sea. If the South China Sea is in a state of Cold War, things have gotten much hotter in the Black Sea. Aside from storms and the narrow straits between it and the Mediterranean that create a hazard, Russia's Navy and Air Force are there to make life far more dangerous. Ukrainian ships have managed to avoid being blockaded by using new routes closer to the west coast and drones to beat back the Russian Black Sea Fleet. Still, missile attacks against Ukrainian ports continue, and the closer you get to Crimea, the bigger danger you'll be in. And finally, number 1. North Sentinel Island. North Sentinel Island is an Indian territory, and the authorities will go to great lengths to keep you out. Get within 3 miles, 5 kilometers, and you'll be prosecuted for your own protection. If you do land there, you'll meet a tribe that's hostile to all outsiders. These people, called the Sentinelese, infamously killed an American missionary that landed on the island in 2018. The Indian authorities didn't even attempt to prosecute against the Sentinelese, so don't think they'll go to bat for you either. Thanks for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you want to see more videos like this, then please consider subscribing and turn on notifications. It really does make a difference. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time on MapPack. There are some beautiful cities in the US. And then there are some where local school districts use a flag system to let people know if they can breathe the air outside that day. In one city, the water is completely undrinkable, while in another, you're gonna be slammed by dust storms. These are 40 US cities that are in the worst possible spot. Number 40. Bullhead City, Arizona. Usually, cities have to deal with intense heat and droughts or flooding. But what if you found a city that dealt with both? Enter Bullhead City, Arizona. Its odd and extreme weather is partly due to its unique location in the Mojave Desert, yet on the Colorado River. On average, temperatures will reach 100 degrees Fahrenheit, 37.7 Celsius, around 135 days a year. Worse yet, as temperatures are also rising over time, by 2050, the temperature will pass 113 degrees Fahrenheit, 45 Celsius, approximately 42 days a year. Almost a month and a half. However, maybe some residents can cool down when their homes flood, as 37% of Bullhead City homes are at risk of flooding from the nearby river, and 85% of buildings are at risk of wildfire. Insurance companies have a field day here. Number 39. Kansas City, Kansas. One good thing you can say about Kansas City is that housing is cheap. The bad thing is that housing is cheap because it seems that not a lot of people want to live there. Kansas City has the strange distinction of having fewer bars, museums, libraries, recreational centers, and restaurants than the US as a whole, even though it's a metro area. There are 120 restaurants per 100,000 Kansas City residents, and it has one of the lowest restaurants per capita of any city in the US. Perhaps the city's biggest problem is that it's right across the state border from and almost part of Kansas City, Missouri, which is generally considered a much more fun town. That's why 150,000 people live in Kansas City, Kansas, while Kansas City, Missouri has attracted over 500,000. Number 38. Hartford, Connecticut. Most locals and residents in Hartford think of it more like an office park to be commuted into than an actual city with amenities people want to use. And in the generally wealthy state of Connecticut, Hartford somehow manages to have a poverty rate of 25.5%. In fact, it usually ranks in the 10 poorest cities in the country. The city was once a hub for manufacturing and insurance, and while some insurance companies remain, a lot of jobs have shifted outwards. In turn, Hartford lost 13% of its population in the 1990s alone, almost equal to the percentage of jobs that moved out at that time. This led to failing public schools thanks to a smaller tax base and fewer opportunities for new generations to get better jobs. Number 37. Amarillo, Texas. If you're looking for a city to sweep you off your feet, head to Amarillo, Texas, because the wind just might do that. Amarillo has been declared the windiest city in the US, as it sits in the middle of the Great Plains area. For those who hate dry conditions, dust storms kicking up all the time, or who suffer from allergies, Amarillo is like its own special version of hell. Worse yet, when the wind is blowing from a specific direction, i.e. from the general area of the cow pastures near it, the smell of manure often permeates the air. Number 36. New York City, New York. New York is famously the city that never sleeps, but in fact, some people like sleeping. But good luck getting those Z's if you're in New York, as it easily outranks every other urban area in the US as the noisiest city in the country. It has the highest population density by far, with just over 29,000 people per square mile. 3 times the nightlife venues of any other US city, and a lot of public transit shaking the ground day and night. If all that weren't enough, about 3,000 flights per day pass right over the city coming from 3 different major NYC area airports. Even with the strongest earplugs in the world, that's a lot to keep you awake. No wonder New Yorkers get a reputation for being cranky. Number 35. Fargo, North Dakota. Best known for starring in a Frances McDormand movie, Fargo is the biggest city in North Dakota. But perhaps more problematically than that, Fargo, with only 133,000 people, is the biggest city by far for hours in any direction. It's 253 miles, 407 kilometers to Minneapolis-St. Paul, and 390 miles, 628 kilometers to Omaha, Nebraska, a 6-hour drive. In fact, Winnipeg, Canada is technically the closest big city, 209 miles, 336 kilometers away. As one resident puts it online, it is geographically one of the most boring and uninspiring places in the United States. It's flat and windy and cold, and while it's decently safe with good education systems, there just isn't much to do. Getting around in the winter months can be kind of a hassle as well, with snow on the ground from about mid-November to mid-April. Number 34. Los Angeles, California. LA has a lot going for it. Sunshine and pleasant temperatures almost year-round, the Pacific Ocean, and palm trees, just to name a few. But in addition to an out-of-control cost of living crisis, it also ranks as the most polluted and smog-filled place in the US. Not to mention the increasing effects of climate change on the city. There are extended droughts affecting water supply and usage in the country's second-largest metro area, and wildfires making many homes almost uninsurable is making life in the city harder year by year. The average price of a home is $1 million. Well, $978,157 if you want to be exact. And since the median savings balance for US households was $8,000 as of 2022, it means the average American can buy a home here never. Number 33. Fairbanks, Alaska. There are some great things to do in Fairbanks. See the northern lights, go dog sledding, and freeze to death far away from any major urban population centers. As pretty as a visit to the city can be, living here is a very different story. First of all, while you might imagine Alaska having some of the cleanest air in the country, that's definitely not the case in Fairbanks. The American Lung Association ranked Fairbanks as one of the most polluted cities for year-round particle pollution. This is mostly thanks to wildfire smoke in the summer and constant wood burning in the winter. At least there's not much reason to be outside, as Fairbanks also ranks as the coldest city in the US. In January, the minimum average temperature is negative 8.3 degrees Fahrenheit, negative 22.4 degrees Celsius, a temperature at which doctors recommend you to stay out for no longer than 30 minutes to avoid frostbite. So if the pollution doesn't get you in Fairbanks, the cold might. Number 32. Dallas, Texas. As in many Texas urban areas, it seems Dallas forgot to put the city in their city. It's an endless sprawl of cookie-cutter suburban neighborhoods with very few amenities for a city of 1.3 million. It's also located on the flat Texas scrublands that makes it extremely hot during June to September, with temperatures over 90 degrees Fahrenheit for 143 days a year on average, and prone to high winds and ice storms in the winter. And any winter storms also tend to make the power grid break down, as Texas is the only state that insists on running its own electrical grid. As one resident says, Dallas has everything you need and nothing you want. Oh, and Dallas is also located in the southern region of Tornado Alley, so it has that going for it. Number 31. Stockton, California. Both Interstate 5 and Highway 99 run right through Stockton, connecting it to the Bay Area, the state capital of Sacramento, and LA. But these highways also accelerated Stockton's deterioration. Highway 99 passed by the rundown sections of Stockton, not its active port or shady, tree-lined residential streets that city managers would rather showcase. Because of the high volume of Californians that drove this route, Stockton had acquired a bad reputation. So, developers decided to build I-5 in the 70s, destroy long-standing, mostly minority communities, and let the city's downtown decay in favor of showing off the nice parts. Then, Stockton rapidly expanded north along the freeway, with many low-density, single-family homes that severely strained city resources, eventually leading to Stockton being branded the foreclosure capital of the world. Number 30. Youngstown, Ohio. Since the 1950s, Youngstown has experienced a 65% drop in population. From just over 168,000 people in 1950, the population dropped to around 58,000 as of 2025. Poverty and crime in the area is relatively high. So why has Youngstown been hit so hard? Well, the city lies on the Mahoning River, which was previously the heart of America's steel production, with 22 miles, 35 kilometers of steel mills on its banks, until September 19, 1977, which became known as Black Monday in the steel industry, as increased automation and foreign imports started shuttering businesses. That was the day Youngstown Sheet and Tube fired 5,000 workers at once. Then, U.S. Steel shut down Ohio Works, also in Youngstown, leaving 2,800 workers out of a job, and Jones and Laughlin Steel Corporation followed suit. Within a decade, 50,000 Youngstown jobs, most of them in steel, were eliminated. Number 29. New Orleans, Louisiana. Hurricanes have repeatedly devastated New Orleans, which has the unfortunate distinction of both being right on the Gulf of Mexico and incredibly low in elevation. This means hurricanes are more likely to hit, and when they do, the city floods. The most devastating hurricane in the last 20 years was Hurricane Katrina, which caused $160 billion in damage to the city. When you're not getting slammed by nature's rage, thanks to the large bodies of water nearby, you're still living in the most humid city in the US, with an average humidity of 75.9%, otherwise known as unbearable. Number 28. Albuquerque, New Mexico. Perhaps there's a reason why Breaking Bad was set in Albuquerque. It's one of the most dangerous cities in the country, with a violent crime rate of 51 per 1,000 residents as opposed to 22.7 in the entire country. That means in any given year living in Albuquerque, you have a 5% chance of becoming the victim of a violent crime. That's partly due to the city being relatively close to the US-Mexico border and the drug trafficking business that thrives there, as well as producing plenty of homegrown drugs. Number 27. Wilmington, North Carolina. Though Cape Hatteras bears the distinction of being the community with the most hurricanes per decade at 7.5, there are barely 500 people left there, probably as a result of repeated hurricanes slamming into their town. So calling it a city seems a little much. But Wilmington, with a population over 120,000 and 6 hurricanes bearing down on it per decade, fits the description much better. The most devastating hurricane on record, Hurricane Florence in 2018, not only caused $17 billion in damage throughout the state, but effectively cut Wilmington off as roads into the peninsula were blocked. Number 26. Erie, Pennsylvania. A city on a lake might sound dreamy, but that's not the case with Erie, Pennsylvania. Named after Lake Erie, whose shores it sits on, Erie has undergone a massive economic decline since its main industry, manufacturing, left it, which may be why the city now has a 26.2% poverty rate, over twice the national average. But that's far from Erie's only issue. It has a geographic problem as well. Like many Great Lakes border towns, Erie gets something called lake effect snow. When cold, dry air passes over warm water, it tends to dump snow on the other side. The city gets an average of 101 inches, 257 centimeters of snow per year, and in recent years has often been experiencing way more than that. In 2017 to 2018, the town got pelted with 166 inches, 422 centimeters of snow. Number 25. Flint, Michigan. Flint made headlines a few years ago for having undrinkable, contaminated water. But what you might not know is that things weren't going well besides that. Its location was once a big boost to its residents. What started as a lumbering area eventually became known as Vehicle City when General Motors was founded in Flint in 1908. Its GM manufacturing plant alone offered 30,000 jobs, and other auto jobs sprang up everywhere around it. But when the auto industry disappeared, the town that had been built up around it went downhill rapidly. Number 24. Bakersfield, California. Bakersfield ranks first as the most polluted city in the US. There are particles called PM 2.5, particles of 2.5 micrometers or less, that indicate how much air pollution a city has. Bakersfield has an annual average concentration of 18.8 micrograms per cubic meter. The World Health Organization recommends a PM 2.5 measurement of no more than 5 micrograms per cubic meter for long-term exposure. Though LA is famous for its smog, inland Southern California cities actually get it a lot worse. Bakersfield is in a valley parallel to the coast, trapped between the Sierra Nevada and Coast Mountain ranges. So the pollution from LA drifts inwards and then gets caught between the mountains. Local schools have to use flags to tell students how bad the pollution is any given day. Green is okay, red is bad, and purple is even worse. Number 23. St. Louis, Missouri. St. Louis, known for its famous arch, the Cardinals baseball team, and being the murder capital of the US. The homicide rate in St. Louis is 54.4 per 100,000 people, well above the average US homicide rate of 7.5. The overall violent crime rate is 1,817 per 100,000. St. Louis got hit hard by the manufacturing decline and is currently in a population freefall. As if that weren't enough, St. Louis may have one of the worst climates of any major city. What kind of weather gets on your nerves? Oppressive heat? Freezing cold? Storms? Humidity? Good news, St. Louis has it all. Because of its central position in the country, St. Louis gets hit by both Arctic cold and tropical fronts from the Gulf of Mexico. Number 22. Gastonia, North Carolina. Gastonia was once a hub of textile manufacturing, but when those jobs vanished in the 1990s, the town was left with soaring unemployment, deep poverty, and a crime rate on par with Chicago's roughest neighborhoods, just without any of the big city perks to balance it out. The problem is that residents had issues moving on to other options. Working in the textile mills didn't require a high degree of education, so other more white-collar jobs that moved into the area were harder for people to move into. In fact, 13.3% of Gastonia's population is functionally illiterate. Though with people being priced out of nearby Charlotte, the town is on a little bit of an upswing. It still has a long way to go, though. Number 21. Lubbock, Texas. There is an entire website called LubbockSucks.com dedicated to how much Lubbock sucks. That's how much hate former and current residents have for the area. Partly, it's because of the city's location in the middle of West Texas. As you will soon see with other cities on this list, West Texas is a difficult place to live, and that goes triple for anyone with allergies. The landscape is very flat, very windy, and very dusty, making things like breathing clean air or keeping anything outside your house clean an impossible feat. Lubbock has haboobs, intense dust storms several times a year, sometimes with hurricane-force winds of over 60 miles an hour. But instead of bringing torrential rain, it just raises 100-foot walls of dust. Number 20. San Bernardino, California. 6 of the worst 10 zip codes in the country when it comes to insurance non-renewals are all located in San Bernardino. Mostly thanks to more and more devastating wildfires, year after year. However, blizzards play a part as well in the winter. Conditions like these have driven many people and businesses out, leading to a 32.6% poverty rate and a slow-to-dead job market. Since the city is in bad shape, some residents seek black market work or illegal relief in the form of meth, making the city and the area of the Inland Empire that surrounds it the methamphetamine capital of the United States. Number 19. Atlantic City, New Jersey. Once upon a time, Atlantic City's geography helped it grow. It was a fun seaside retreat, with a lively boardwalk as well as shops and restaurants along the beach. Now, it's known more for people smoking at slot machines in rundown casinos. In the early 20th century, people living in the Northeast went to Atlantic City as a resort destination. However, as flights to the Caribbean and Florida got super cheap, and people realized beaches in Turks and Caicos were better than coastal New Jersey, Atlantic City lost its attractiveness. In the late 1970s, the town decided to start building up casinos to get some tourists back. And it did, but cities that rely on gambling, especially if they're already on a downswing, tend to develop other problems, like crime, addiction, and poverty. Currently, Atlantic City has a 33% poverty rate and a crime rate of 87 per 1,000 people. Number 18. Mobile, Alabama. When you think of the country's rainiest cities, you may imagine places like Portland or Seattle, but the rainiest city in the US is by far Mobile, Alabama. In case you're the kind of person that thinks, great, I love the rain, you should know that might not apply in Mobile, where 21.6% of the population is depressed. Also, that rain sometimes includes hurricanes, since Mobile has the unfortunate geographic luck of sitting right on the Gulf of America, formerly known as the Gulf of Mexico. But don't worry, it doesn't rain all the time. Some days you'll only have to deal with crushing humidity, averaging 75% a year and 77% during the summer months, almost the same level you would find in a tropical rainforest. But instead, you're in Mobile. Number 17. Syracuse, New York. Another city near, though not on, the Great Lakes, Syracuse has the distinction of seeing the most precipitation per year. The city gets 110 inches, 279 centimeters of snow, 38.5 inches, 98 centimeters of rain, and generally a damp climate. If that doesn't get you down, the local 29.6% poverty rate just might. Syracuse has been in economic decline for decades now due to the loss of metals manufacturing, an industry that used to dominate the economy in this area. Number 16. Brownsville, Texas. Brownsville took the #1 spot in WalletHub's list of the unhealthiest places in the United States. No small feat for a country known for fast food chains and mammoth-sized food portions. The survey looked at categories like food, fitness, healthcare, and cases of premature death. Brownsville scored dead last in food and fitness, with limited access to fruit or vegetables or fitness centers and green spaces. Unfortunately, a lot of the unhealthy population can't get good healthcare either, as 32% of the city under 65 years old is uninsured, compared to 9.5% for the entire country. So why is Brownsville this way? In summary, the city is really poor, with an almost 25% poverty rate, incredibly hot, and has very little investment in public infrastructure or community well-being. Number 15. Lancaster, California. Lancaster has several distinctions as a city, none of which are good. It's been ranked one of the most dangerous cities in California, one of the worst to live in, having one of the longest commutes, the highest divorce rates, and perhaps as a combination of all these facts, the most stressful city in the state. Many of the problems with Lancaster lie in the city's geography and location. A lot of people who live there work in the Los Angeles area, a 70-mile, 113-kilometer at minimum commute away, and simply live in or near Lancaster for the cheap property prices. But it creates a lot of stress and resentment in a population that has to spend at least 3 hours in their car daily. Not to mention the surrounding area is arid, dusty, and really not much to look at. Number 14. Cleveland, Ohio. Forbes ranked Cleveland dead last among 71 U.S. cities for job creation. Once the 5th largest city in the U.S., Cleveland has had similar struggles as many other Rust Belt towns after the death of manufacturing, but it has fared worse than many. The city's education spending has plunged downwards, leading to difficulties for local residents seeking to move on up in life. The city ranks near the bottom of transit spending too, making it hard for people to commute. Both those factors are unattractive for new businesses looking into the area. As executive director of Policy Matters Ohio, Amy Hanauer said, if a company wants to come somewhere, they want to know they can get well-trained workers. They want to know that those folks can get to work. Not to mention that decades of local corruption have led to questionable city choices, like the building of Berkey Lakefront Airport, which takes up significant lakefront property and is used exclusively for charter and business flights. Many locals think this land could be put to better use to serve all of Cleveland. Number 13. Montgomery, Alabama. Montgomery is the state capital of Alabama, and that's pretty much it. It has a unique combination of the limited amenities of a small city with all the big city problems: property crime, poverty, and the occasional soundtrack of gunfire in the distance. However, one of the most frequent complaints about Montgomery is about the schools. According to the latest U.S. News & World Report, Alabama ranks 44th in education, which is already pretty bad. And Montgomery County ranks as the worst area in Alabama when it comes to public schools, with 14 schools failing. Lots of private schools have opened up to fix the problem, but this leaves a lot of working and lower middle-class residents stuck. The presence of so many private and magnet schools means the richest quarter of the local population doesn't care about the area's public schools. This results in one of the most underfunded educational systems in the country. Number 12. Jackson, Mississippi. Jackson, located in, you guessed it, Mississippi, which frequently ranks last on state lists for income, health, education, and several other factors, has a lot of unfortunate distinctions. It's the 8th most miserable city in the US based on a variety of factors, including a poverty rate of 32.2% and an unemployment rate of 7.7%. Some cities in a bad spot are finding themselves on an upward swing due to cheap housing prices and people moving in, but that's not the case in Jackson. In fact, it's third on a list of poor U.S. cities getting poorer, with the median income actually going down over the last few years. That's the result of a slow-motion death spiral that's gripped Jackson for decades. Regulation chipped away at the tax base, municipal services crumbled, and as the city decayed, residents fled to the suburbs. Fewer people meant even less funding, and the cycle just kept going, dragging the city down with it. Number 11. Memphis, Tennessee. According to WalletHub, Memphis, the birthplace of rock and roll, is also the most dangerous city in the US. And that's not just due to violent crime, which is off the charts. The city has a homicide rate of 43 per 100,000 people, putting it right between South Africa and Haiti. In fact, Numbeo found that Memphis is the 10th most dangerous city in the world, and it has the dubious distinction of being the only US city on the top 10 list. Memphis also ranked worst for traffic deaths in 2022, as Consumer Affairs found that there were 33 car-related deaths for every 100,000 people in Memphis. Weather that produces sudden rainstorms and fog out of nowhere. It's also due to weird local rules that state you don't need a driver's license to buy a car, and you don't need to get your car inspected. So next time you're driving through Memphis, maybe don't. Number 10. Shreveport, Louisiana. Many people who grow up in Shreveport try to find ways to leave Shreveport. It's hard to pick what's more frustrating: the poverty and stagnant job market, the crime rate, the mosquitoes, or the fact that the power goes out every time a gust of wind blows on the power lines. Things have gotten so bad that the Louisiana Public Service Commissioner, Foster Campbell, asked for a review of SWEPCO's practices, the company that handles power for most of North Louisiana. Perhaps the saddest distinction Shreveport has is that it ranked as the 156th safest city in the country out of 182. The local paper actually ran this headline, pointing out that this made Shreveport the safest urban area in Louisiana. Why? Well, because elsewhere in Louisiana is number 9, Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Baton Rouge ranked as the 179th safest city in the US out of 182 cities. That's pretty horrible, as is its location in Louisiana's infamous Cancer Alley, an 85-mile, 137-kilometer stretch of land along the Mississippi River between Baton Rouge and New Orleans, where cancer rates are almost twice the national average. That's mostly due to a lot of petrochemical plants and operations in the area, which belch toxic gases and fossil fuels into the atmosphere and the river water day after day. Antonia Yuhas, Human Rights Watch's senior researcher on fossil fuels, summarizes the problem harshly but clearly. The fossil fuel and petrochemical industry has created a sacrifice zone in Louisiana. Number 8. Houston, Texas. Imagine Dallas, but with more bugs and humidity. Oh, and dirt. That's right, LawnStart ranked Houston the dirtiest city in the country based on a combination of pollution, living conditions, infrastructure, and overall cleanliness. And we're not kidding about the bugs. Houston ranked first in household cockroach infestations, thanks mostly to its heat, humidity, and, well, not great standard of cleanliness. It was also the third city in metric tons of greenhouse gas emissions from local facilities, and fifth in sewage disposal breakdowns. All the lists no one ever wants to be a part of. It also ranks as the riskiest state for homeownership, thanks to a combination of floods, 64% of homes at risk, extreme heat, 98% of homes at risk, and hurricanes. Number 7. Detroit, Michigan. Unfortunately, Detroit has gotten such a bad reputation as a city that it's almost a punchline. Though its leaders have invested in regenerating its downtown area, it consistently ranks as one of the poorest cities in the country, with a median income of just over $24,000 per capita as of 2023. The glory days of the nation's former car manufacturing capital are long gone. and its residents aren't doing too well outside of finances either. Detroit ranked as the least healthy city in the US. It has the highest percentage of adults with diabetes, 18.2%, the highest percentage of adults with obesity, 45.5%, and the highest percentage of adults who smoke, 28.5%. It also has the second highest rate of heart disease deaths per 100,000 residents, and the second highest rate of opioid overdose deaths per 100,000 residents. So, if you want to live a long, healthy, successful life, this probably isn't the best place. Number 6. Toledo, Ohio. Many cities in the Rust Belt have been hit hard. But Toledo? As some locals who moved away would say, it's the Ohio of Ohio. Though some things have been improving, the violent crime rate still sits at 1,146 per 100,000, double the national average. And the poverty rate of the city is more than double the national rate, 23.3% compared to 11.5%. Its lakeside location has also caused some issues in the past, as toxic algae blooms contaminated the entire water supply, and residents were unable to drink, bathe, cook, or brush their teeth. Number 5. Baltimore, Maryland. The story of Baltimore's decline is an all too familiar one for many US cities. Deindustrialization got rid of many decently paying jobs, rapidly increasing poverty and its associated problems, including the most overdose deaths of any US city with around 1,000 in 2023, 921 of those from fentanyl. However, Baltimore is finding it almost impossible to bounce back due to a geographic anomaly. It is one of the country's only independent cities, meaning it's not part of a county, so it literally can't grow beyond its current boundaries. So when some neighborhoods got crime-ridden and bad, and we mean bad, as Baltimore often ranked second or third in US cities with the most crime, and people left, they just left the city entirely. And the city literally can't annex the surrounding areas or expand into them to try to rehaul itself. Number 4. Odessa, Texas. Don't drink the water. That's one of the first things every Odessa resident will tell you. See, what brought Odessa wealth and overpriced rent was the local oil and gas industry. It also brought benzene and hydrogen sulfide, releasing it into the air and water table. In 2022, air analysts smelled something like rotten eggs in the air, then found that hydrogen sulfide levels had risen to 82 times their acceptable levels for residential areas. At high levels, hydrogen sulfide causes respiratory infections, dizziness, nausea, headaches, decreased lung function, and increased cancer risks. As a bonus, there's also a Superfund site in the area, a site designated for cleanup by the EPA, contaminated with chromium left over from chrome plating operations in the 60s and 70s. As for the upsides of the area, well, it's honestly hard to find any. It's dusty, windy, with a high crime rate, and not a whole lot to do. The usual bonus of cities no one hates is crazy low housing prices, but Odessa doesn't even have that. Home prices average around $500,000. Number 3. Gary, Indiana. Gary used to be known as the murder capital of the US. However, while it's still shady, crime has fallen a bit in recent years. That might be because since 1960, 61% of Gary's population has just left. Another Rust Belt town that started rapidly declining when its primary industries left, Gary still actually has a steel mill in operation, and that makes matters worse. The U.S. steel plant emits nitrogen oxide and soot, leaving what visitors describe as a horrible metallic smell in the air, leading to lots of nose and throat irritation in the local population. It's also the plant with one of the highest carbon pollution footprints in the U.S., emitting 10.3 million tons of greenhouse gases in 2021 alone. As you can imagine, this makes Gary a difficult place to be. Number 2. Camden, New Jersey. People who grew up in towns around Camden were taught one thing: avoid driving through Camden, especially at night. For about 2 decades, Camden has been ranked between number 1 and number 5 on lists of most dangerous US cities. Your chance of becoming a victim of violent crime there is 1 in 59. But that's not the only reason why this 70,000-person town has lost almost half its population since 1950. The city's largest former industries and employers, RCA Victor, Campbell's Soup, and the New York Shipbuilding Corporation, all either shut down or moved most of their industrial activity outside of Camden to avoid unions. This caused massive unemployment, which in turn led to poverty, substance abuse, and increased crime. Though efforts have been made to turn the city around, Camden's current poverty rate still sits at around 28.5%. And finally, number 1, Pharr, Texas. The 80,000-person city of Pharr is one of the poorest places in the country. The median household income is approximately $32,000, while almost 38% of residents make under $25,000. This would be bad enough for most cities, but in Pharr, it's just the beginning. Pharr also ranks incredibly low when it comes to healthcare access, 500th in the country, family and food security, 496th, environmentally, 483rd, and in terms of economic stability, 475th. Basically, it doesn't crack the top 450 cities in the US on almost any metric, except possibly housing affordability. But after hearing all this, investing in a home there shouldn't sound like too good of an idea anyway. Thanks for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you want to see more videos like this, then please consider subscribing and turn on notifications. It really does make a difference. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time on MapPack. From white sand beaches to ice-capped mountains, and from volcanic Pacific islands to the most remote corners of the Earth, some places aren't just stunning, they could save your life when World War III kicks off. But before you book a one-way ticket to Antarctica and plan to ride it out with the penguins, here are the safest places to be when the bombs start to fall. As tensions continue to rise across the globe, it's starting to feel like World War III isn't a question of if, but when. US relations with, well, pretty much everyone have soured. Russia is still dragging out its 3-day special military operation years later, and China is flexing its muscles around Taiwan. Meanwhile, the Middle East remains a volatile flashpoint, with rising hostilities threatening to draw in major powers. With diplomacy on life support, the world is sliding towards catastrophe, and in a war that big, survival might depend entirely on where you are. The white sand beaches of Fiji might sound like the perfect vacation getaway, but when the bombs start to fall, what makes it worth hiding out there? For starters, it's far from the front lines. Take out a map and look at all the treaty allies of the United States. They tend to skirt around the periphery of the Eurasian landmass, the interior of which is more or less aligned with Russia and China. Now look at the joints between the two. If you're in East Asia or the Pacific region, you'll want to first get away from the countries along what geostrategists call the First Island Chain, which goes from Japan to the Indonesian archipelago. The most intense battles in this theater would take place there, because this is the first line of defense for the US and its allies to contain China's military aims. China has to break through this barrier to secure its trade and supply lines, let alone get all it wants out of World War III. But the hostilities would reach further, thanks to China's large arsenal of ballistic and cruise missiles. Guam and even Hawaii would be huge targets because they're bases for the US military. Even the US mainland would be attacked in some way. Oh, and get away from the Korean peninsula too, for obvious reasons. But Fiji is far from the front lines and far down on the list of targets. Although it has close ties to Washington, no one would bat an eye if Suva declared its neutrality, at least at first. After all, its military only has about 4,000 individuals with a reserve force of 6,000 personnel. In terms of distance, Australia is the closest of the belligerent powers, and it's almost 2,900 miles, 4,600 kilometers away. So you have distance on your side. That's one major World War III survival category that Fiji fulfills. But what about the other? You'd have plenty to survive on out here. Fiji has about 300 islands in its total territory, so you can cruise around and enjoy catching the abundant fish. Fishermen catch over 36,000 tons of them every year, and there are over 1,300 species in Fiji's fisheries to choose from. But if you do get tired of seafood, Fiji has almost 77,000 hectares of arable land, and it grows some pretty diverse stuff. Common crops include bananas, potatoes, coconuts, pineapples, and kava. The Fijians also like to take the root of this plant and make it into a recreational drink, similar to alcohol. Parts of the country get enough rainfall to support plenty of poultry, pigs, and cattle. Also, there's a whole lot of sugarcane and even chocolate to satisfy even the sweetest of teeth. And Fiji doesn't have resources that a belligerent great power would be interested in, at least at first. That phrase might have tipped you off to something. Fiji isn't foolproof as a hiding place, so don't get comfortable in that hammock just yet. If the war ended in short order, it likely wouldn't see much action, but the unpredictability of a long war means Fiji will have some drawbacks. Take another look at the first island chain. If the United States and its allies win there, you probably wouldn't have much to worry about. But if China, North Korea, and whatever allies they can call on manage to break through at least part of this line, Fiji is getting closer to the danger zone. Further east from Japan is the second island chain, and the next stop along the way is the third island chain, from the Aleutians in Alaska down to New Zealand. The US and its allies would retreat here to keep China further at bay if things went really poorly, and that line runs right through parts of Fiji. And if the war gets messy, by World War III standards, there are some things in Fiji that could prove useful after all, to a warring power under extreme stress. Things like timber, precious metals, and copper, plus the potential for offshore oil in Fiji's exclusive economic zone. So Fiji's pretty safe, but after hearing that, you might want a tropical getaway that could be even safer. How about Tuvalu? It's 1,000 miles, 1,600 kilometers to the north, so it'll be even further away from any major battleground, at least in the war's opening phase. It also has most of the other things you could want on a World War III survival list. Like Fiji, it doesn't have any treaty alliances, so it's likely that no one would mind too much if it suddenly made like Switzerland and declared neutrality, especially because it only has a population of about 10,000 people and a total area of about 10 square miles, 25 square kilometers. Good for 192nd in the world. The place is densely packed, though, at just under 1,100 people per square mile, 423 per square kilometer. So you better make sure you get along with your new neighbors. And if you can, there's plenty to sustain you here. As you might have guessed, there's a lot of fish to go around in Tuvalu. 42% of the country's people are directly involved in the fishing industry. Its exclusive economic zone at sea is 34,000 times larger than its land area, so there are plenty of places for you to go cast your lines. Tuna species represent 90% of the total catch, but there are 194 species in total. On land, coconuts are plentiful, but since there's fewer natural resources to go around than on Fiji, your diet probably won't be as diverse. We'll let you decide whether it's more important to have a little more safety in exchange for a more routine plate on your table. At least you won't ever have to worry about running out of fresh water, and fewer resources means even less of a reason for the warring powers to take an interest in this place. But even Tuvalu isn't completely off the annihilation chessboard. Its geography and political ties could put it in harm's way if things get messy. Though it's not a formal ally, it maintains close relationships with the United States and Australia. It's also one of the few countries that still recognize Taiwan over the People's Republic of China, something that definitely doesn't sit well with Beijing. It's also just past the second island chain, so it's a bit of a weather vane for how the war as a whole would be going. If Tuvalu stays as it is now, the strategy to contain China is probably working. If Chinese planes are a routine sight in the skies and ships are moving around offshore, it's a sign that you should book a flight to somewhere else. The last thing you'd want to be is trapped behind Chinese lines in World War III. If Chinese hardware becomes a routine sight near Tuvalu, you can try retreating further south, to the end of the second island chain in New Zealand. On paper, this looks like it wouldn't be such a great choice. Aside from being in the island chain, New Zealand is a treaty ally of the United States. Even so, the country isn't likely to be a major player in the war. It has a small military at only about 15,000 people, according to its parliament. Even under wartime stresses, it wouldn't be able to contribute a whole lot more. Its total population is only a little over 5 million people, with only about 1.8 million considered fit for military service and 62,000 reaching military age every year. Sure, New Zealand could see a missile or two coming its way in the event of a full mobilization, but if we were China or North Korea, we would want to use those on more important targets. We'll explain more on that in a moment. It might sound strange, but the American homeland is more likely to get hit by those missiles than New Zealand is. Geography gives New Zealand some critical advantages. It's over 1,000 miles, 1,600 kilometers southeast of Australia, putting it far from most conflict zones. Strategically, its only real military value would be as a point to cut off supply lines between the United States and Australia, something the Japanese attempted in World War II, but even they couldn't reach this far. China has even less experience projecting power at such colossal distances, so we're betting that New Zealand won't be a high-priority target even if the war goes to their liking. So New Zealand passes the first test, despite its likely belligerent status. What about survival? The first thing you should do is look at the sheep. New Zealand is a country of sheep. Literally. In 2022, there were 25.3 million sheep in the country, about 5 sheep for every person. That's the lowest ratio in 170 years. But who's counting sheep during World War III? There's more important things to worry about, like mutually assured destruction. The abundant sheep means there's a ready protein source for you to survive on. But it's not just about the food you eat. World War III would disrupt global supply chains, and by disrupt, we mean completely blow up. But at least you'll have clothes on your back. And unless sheep become a strategic military target, you'll have a lot of wool to make textiles with. The sheep are just part of a sprawling agricultural sector, too. New Zealand is self-sufficient when it comes to food production. However, in 2022, only 2% of New Zealand's total territory was arable land. If you can't stomach eating those cute little sheep, you don't need to worry. The farms here produce things like oats, wheat, barley, corn, peas, lentils, canola, and clovers. New Zealand is also an island nation, which means there's a lot of fish for you to catch too. You can enjoy the abundance of kingfish, snapper, yellowfin tuna, Chinook salmon, and too many others to name. So what would the drawbacks be? Aside from it being involved in the network of alliances that helped lead to this catastrophe, New Zealand has resources that a warring power would want. There's gold, silver, coal, oil, natural gas, iron ore, and so on. It's likely that a victorious China would demand these in the form of tribute rather than spend its own resources occupying a country as far away as New Zealand. But stranger things have happened. Still, when it comes to the Pacific region, this is probably the safest and most comfortable place for you to be. But it's called World War III for a reason. Emphasis on the word world. With Russia also involved, all of Eastern Europe between the Baltic and the Black Sea would be a major battleground. Anywhere east of Germany would be in huge danger, and just retreating to the west isn't an answer. Take out a map of Europe, and you'll notice a geographical feature that would be of major importance for this war, as it's been for too many other wars in Europe to name. There's a huge stretch of open land that spans most of the continent's length, from the Pyrenees to the Urals. That's the European plain, and the further east you go, the more open the plain gets. At the Urals, it spans 1,200 miles, 1,900 kilometers from the Arctic Ocean to the Caspian Sea. Putin hates this, like every Russian dictator has before him. It means Russia has borders that are pretty much impossible to defend, which is kind of a problem in a war. Since geography is destiny, one of Putin's top World War III goals would be to extend Russian influence as far west as he can. Now, since Russia's military can't even go far west in Ukraine, we wouldn't blame you for doubting that Putin would be able to get a reconstruction of the Soviet Union out of this. But we've already seen how he makes up for these shortcomings. Every major city in Europe would be a target for his missiles and drones. The further east you are, the likelier you'd be to get hit. But it would be a bad idea to count yourself as being safe if you're in London, Paris, or even Madrid. Sure, you can flee to the countryside, but any place in NATO would be potentially a target, especially if there's a military base nearby. Even the east coast of the United States would be a target, or the American heartland for that matter. Russia has decades of experience in choosing potential targets to hit with ballistic missiles in the continental United States. Intercontinental ballistic missiles don't really care about Arctic ice. Most of Europe and the North Atlantic would be unsafe. But what about Iceland? Yes, it's part of NATO, but there's not much it can contribute to the alliance. It doesn't have a standing army or navy. The most it has is a coast guard with small arms, artillery, and air defense radar stations. In fact, Iceland as we know it hasn't ever participated in a war. It has stayed neutral for a millennium, probably because that was the only way such a tiny country could survive. When it took part in NATO's operations in Afghanistan, it was mostly in a PR capacity, not a military one. As far as targets go, this isn't a place that's likely to attract much of Putin's attention. And there's a lot to survive with here. You might have guessed this by now, but Iceland has a lot of fish for you to eat. Fishing was the backbone of its economy from the 9th to the 20th centuries, and it still directly makes up 11% of the country's GDP and almost 39% of its exports. Over 1.1 million tons of fish were caught in 2021. While the missiles are flying overhead elsewhere, you can enjoy the fireworks with some Atlantic salmon, Atlantic cod, various kinds of halibut, and a whole lot more. And here's the really great thing. You won't need to rely on imported energy to cook that fish within this world full of blown-up supply chains. Iceland is an energy self-sufficient country. 70% of its energy comes from its hydroelectric power plants, and the other 30% comes from geothermal sources. 90% of the country's households are heated with geothermal water. The country's only energy vulnerability is that it needs to import fossil fuels to use for transport, but that's changing quickly. Iceland is adopting electric cars faster than almost any other country. 85% of the cars sold in Iceland in the first half of 2022 were electric. That was up from the 60% seen in 2021 and the 46% seen in 2020. You'll just be able to plug a car into that geothermal energy grid and soon move along to the next lake to catch your big fish. So, what are the drawbacks when it comes to Iceland? One of them is that even though the island itself is mostly safe, there would be one particular area of interest for Russia. Go to the Reykjanes Peninsula in southwestern Iceland. At the bottom of it, you'll find a very important US military base. That's the Naval Air Station Keflavik, and in 2019 something peculiar happened there. A B-2 Spirit bomber visited this place for the first time. It was just a brief pit stop, but it was a sign of things to come. Iceland had become important again. The recent Operation Midnight Hammer against Iran's nuclear sites revealed just how powerful a fleet of stealth bombers could be. There are only a few places in the world that can host the B-2 for long periods because it needs special climate-controlled hangars. As fate would have it, this base is probably one of them. By 2021, the B-2 was making extended visits to Keflavik. The B-21 Raider bomber would likely be making visits too in the coming years, so you can be sure that Keflavik would be a high-priority target for a missile attack. But if you stay away from there, Iceland is a good bet. Just make sure your electric car is charged. You'll want a fast getaway from the southwest before the missiles begin to fall. Or maybe you can do what Eric the Red did back in the late 10th century and head west to an even safer place. You'll quickly find that Greenland isn't really green since 80% of it is covered in ice. It's the real Iceland if there ever was one. Average winter temperatures here get to -0.4 degrees Fahrenheit, 18 below Celsius on the thermometer, with some places going as low as -58, -50 Celsius. Yeah, it won't be pleasant, but that's exactly the point, because it's unlikely that anyone would fight too hard for a place that's 80% ice. But living in a war zone is probably more unpleasant. Since the vast majority of the people in Greenland live on the southwest part of the island, there's not a whole lot in its interior, which means there aren't many roads in this part of the world. There are only 93 total miles, 150 kilometers of roads in the entire country. and only 56 miles, 90 kilometers are paved. No two communities in Greenland are connected by road. Even the capital, Nuuk, only has 2 traffic lights. That might sound like a hassle, but the point is that targeting Greenland is probably going to be much more trouble than it's worth for any great power at war. Occupying such a place would require a lot of investment. And despite its remoteness, Greenland has many advantages when it comes to survival. It can be completely energy self-sufficient. Its power plants can produce 545 million kilowatt hours, while Greenlanders consume 534.5 million annually. And yes, there's a lot of fish around to eat. The fishing industry makes up about 90% of Greenland's total exports. You can try some of the local halibut, salmon, prawns, cod, crab, and scallops, just to name a few. Common crops include potatoes, tomatoes, cucumbers, cabbage, and the Greenlanders are even experimenting with strawberries. Like New Zealand, there are a lot of sheep around here too. Even if the fish are enough meat for you, those wool textiles will come in handy when it gets cold. And that's definitely going to happen. Yeah, Greenland would technically be one of the belligerent powers if NATO's Article 5 gets triggered. As an autonomous region of Denmark, it's a member of the alliance, but there's only one US military installation on Greenland. It's the Pituffik Space Base in the northwest part of the island. The base has some valuable things like a 10,000-foot, 3,000-meter runway that handles over 3,000 international flights a year and a ballistic missile early warning system. But even if this place proves to be a target, as long as you stay far away from it, the rest of the island is safe. In fact, on the day World War III starts, Greenland might just be the safest place for you in the entire world. But before you start hastily packing your Arctic gear and fleeing north, there is something you should be aware of. Consider it a long-term risk. To see what we mean, look at a map as you get closer to the Arctic Ocean. You'll notice an almost perfectly diagonal line between Greenland and the United Kingdom, with Iceland right in the middle and Greenland on the left flank. That's the line geographers call the GIUK gap. This line was very important in the Cold War, and it could well be again. To see why, look at it from Russia's perspective. Go further east on the map, to the Russian port of Murmansk, and you'll see one of the many problems with that country's geography. To break out into the open ocean, Russia would need to cross the GIUK line. It's sort of like the first island chain for this part of the world. NATO would want to keep Russia behind that line. Russia would want to get through it and move on down the Atlantic. If things go well enough in Europe, Russian ships might find Iceland and Greenland enticing. Breaking through the GIUK gap would mean safer supply lines and better positioning for its ships and submarines to threaten other NATO members, including the continental United States. Mind you, we don't think this is a very likely possibility. The Russian Navy is a floating disaster. Just look at what Ukraine did to it in the Black Sea, even though it has no navy. Fighting against NATO's combined naval might so far from its shores isn't something it would likely be good at. So you can consider it a low risk, but we just want to inform you about all the potential risks because we're concerned about your safety. There's one more thing about Greenland that's worth taking note of. You've undoubtedly heard about Donald Trump's desire to purchase the island. He says it's vital for America's national security, and it's not just about the GIUK gap. It's more about the ice. This place might actually live up to its name soon. It has an average thickness of 1.4 miles, 2.3 kilometers, but it's melting fast. Between 2002 and 2021, melting ice caused global sea levels to rise by around 0.03 inches, 0.8 millimeters per year. That's 280 gigatons worth every 12 months. And there's a lot of stuff that a warring power would be very interested in buried underneath that ice. There's coal, oil, and natural gas for energy. There's uranium for nuclear materials, thorium for potential next-gen nuclear power plants, lithium for batteries, and rare earth elements that are vital for modern electronic technology, like the device you're watching this video on. That also includes military gear, by the way. Good luck building sonars or jet engines without them. If you're keeping this in mind as you make your World War III escape plans, you might want to stay away from the town of Narsak. It's estimated to hold a whopping 25% of the world's total rare earth reserves. In 2022, investors estimated the value of Greenland's rare earths at $320 billion. But that number is only going to grow as the ice melts and demand soars. So when it comes to Greenland, the risk profile probably increases over time, though it will still be much safer than almost anywhere else. But are you doomed to frost if you live in the Western Hemisphere? You might be jealous that your counterparts in the East get to go to places like tropical Fiji and Tuvalu, or even in a much more inviting place like New Zealand while you're stuck shivering when it's 30 below outside. Well, you're in luck. There's a place deep in the Atlantic and much further south that could be the perfect destination for you. Nowhere in mainland Europe would be safe in World War III, but as you might have guessed, there are autonomous territories far away that have a much reduced risk profile. The Azores is one of them. These islands are an autonomous region of Portugal 870 miles 1,400 kilometers west of Lisbon. The climate here is nice and mild thanks to the Gulf Stream, with typical temperatures in the 60s and 70s Fahrenheit, 17 to 26 Celsius year-round. Since Portugal is part of NATO, the Azores would technically be a warring territory. But since it's far off Europe and far behind the GI-UK gap, it's pretty safe on the whole. Food? Your typical plate here probably won't be what you expect. Unsurprisingly, there's tuna to go around, but the Azores fishing industry is surprisingly small because the ecosystem is fragile. A European Union report from 2015 mentioned that between 13,000 and 15,000 tons are caught annually, employment enough only for about 500 people. That might not sound like a lot compared to what you've seen elsewhere, but if you're just trying to survive, it's probably enough. With global supply chains destroyed, you take what you can get. Fortunately, there's something to make up for it. There's a lot of volcanic activity in the Azores. There are 26 active volcanoes here, 8 of which lie beneath the surface. The only island in the archipelago that doesn't have a volcano is Santa Maria. But the frequency of volcanic activity also means that the soil here is extremely nutritious. Combine that with the Mediterranean to subtropical climate, and you have a place that's fantastic for growing crops. You'll find bananas, pineapples, yams, potatoes, including sweet potatoes, tomatoes, cereals, and even tea. There's also a strong dairy sector here, and aside from cows, there's pigs, poultry, goats, and sheep. Your diet would be well balanced here. Sounds like a great place in any setting. In World War III, it sounds positively fantastic. So what would be one of the downsides? If you plan on staying here, you'll need to be mindful of an important US military base. That's Lajes Field on Terceira Island, 9.3 miles 15 kilometers northeast of the town of Angra do Heroísmo. There are about 600 personnel from the US Department of Defense at Lajes, and it's an important staging point for NATO operations across the Atlantic. It hosts C-17 transport aircraft and the KC-46 Pegasus, the latest refueling aircraft in the USAF's fleet. Lajes played an important role in Operation Desert Storm, and with stuff like that around, it would be in any wider war in Europe or the Middle East. You can bet that Lajes would be a target for Russian missiles. Stay away from there, though, and there's not much else of interest for a warring power except for timber. Even if Russia broke through the GI-UK gap in a bizarre alternate universe, its ships wouldn't see much reason to stop there. There are other European territories on the high seas. Further south lie the Canary Islands, which are part of Spain. In terms of climate, this might be the best place in the world. Hey, one of the major tourist sites says so must be true, right? If you like soaking up the sun, preferably with some sunscreen on, you can't go wrong here. The Canaries get 3,000 hours of sunlight a year, more than any other place in Europe. Typical temperatures are in the 60s and 70s, 17 to 26 Celsius year-round. But what can you survive on out here? The Canaries grow more bananas than you'll ever want to eat. Over half the bananas eaten in Europe come from here. There are also potatoes, tomatoes, cucumbers, green beans, and vineyards if you don't want to give up your wine or if you just want to eat grapes. You can also try some of the world's most renowned goat cheese, the mojorero. It comes from the island of Fuerteventura, which is arid and volcanic but perfect for goat pasture. And the island of Tenerife has more fishing guilds than any other place in Spain. That's because the Canaries are known for their big game fish. You can enjoy the local tuna, mackerel, dentex, and marlin. You're supposed to throw the blue marlin at the end of your line back, but that's today. If World War III breaks out, things might change, and at least you know it's available. So what might be the downsides? Well, Spain is part of NATO, and while there's no US-owned military base in the Canaries, there is a Spanish Air Force base. That's Gando Air Base on Gran Canaria, which sees regular activity from the US military. Aircraft like the C-17 Globemaster III are frequent visitors here, so Gando is another important site for NATO's transatlantic logistics. If you're planning to wait out World War III in the Canaries, you'll probably want to stay away from here, just in case. Also, the Canaries are already a highly popular tourist destination, so you probably won't be the only one trying to get here. The demand is already proving hard for the water supply to take, with over-extraction and sometimes contamination being big problems. If you're gonna camp out here, make sure you respect the local environment. In World War III, you might not be able to have that daily shower. Hey, it's better than getting vaporized though. But World War III wouldn't be limited to Europe and East Asia. You can bet that the Middle East would see fighting too. The always troubled crescent between the Persian Gulf and the Mediterranean Sea would witness the worst of it. That's where the region's major powers of Iran, Israel, and Turkey would find the most reason to come to blows. What should you do if you're unfortunate enough to be here? Maybe try to get to Egypt? Egypt isn't the best bet. It has the strongest military in Africa and close ties with Washington. Even if it decides to stay neutral, it hosts one of the world's most strategically important spots, the Suez Canal, which has been the objective of warring parties in the past, and it wouldn't escape now. So if you're going to the African continent, the entire Mediterranean coastline would be in danger. Instead, you'll want to head south. The further south you go, the further away from the great powers you'll get. Africa would see its intrigues in World War III. It has a lot of resources that the great powers are interested in, but with so many more urgent priorities in the oceans and on the Eurasian landmass, you're unlikely to see military campaigning here, and South Africa would be the furthest away of all. As a part of the BRICS framework, South Africa is generally aligned with China and Russia, but it probably wouldn't want to get involved in a world war so far to the north if it didn't have to. Smart decision, and good for you, because there's a lot of attractive things about this place. If city life is for you, Cape Town would be a good choice. In 2022, there were 4.7 million people in the metro area. It might be one of the safest cities of that size in the world. Well, from war at least. When you get there, you'll be able to enjoy the comfortable Mediterranean climate, with average temperatures getting to about 80 degrees Fahrenheit, 27 Celsius in the summer, and about 55 degrees Fahrenheit, 13 Celsius in the winter. No blazing heat, no bitter frost. What about food? South Africa exported 3.9 million tons of fish in 2019. You can find tuna, cod, catfish, herrings, and so on. South Africa is also one of the world's 10 largest producers of many kinds of crops, including grapefruits, cereals, pears, and crops high in nutritionally rich fiber. The Western Cape, which hosts Cape Town, grows wheat, barley, and oats that contribute over 30% of the country's total agricultural product. Soybeans and sugarcane are also major crops, so you can rest easy that your sweet tooth won't be lacking here. So what might be the drawbacks? Well, South Africa and Cape Town in particular were once strategic hotspots. Before the Suez Canal opened in 1869, the Cape of Good Hope was the way for ships to get between Europe and Asia. Disruptions up north will see increased traffic, which could lead to trouble. We've already seen a dress rehearsal with Houthi attacks in the Red Sea, but the more specific danger would have nothing to do with the war. South Africa has a high crime rate. There are about 58.94 crimes per 100,000 people in this country, and a murder rate of 34 per 100,000 people. In terms of violent crime, it's ranked the third most dangerous country in the world. The power supply also wouldn't be as reliable as a place like Iceland. The national power utility, a company called Exxon, has failed to meet demand since 2007. That means periodic power outages, including up to 12 hours in some places during 2023. It would be even worse in World War III. But if you pick the right spot in Cape Town, you would still be in less danger than you would thousands of miles to the north. So far, we've talked about old world hiding spots. What about the new world? The United States would be targeted, so hiding out there isn't an option anymore. South America is a good bet though. No country here is likely to be dragged into World War III, at least for now. But there are other considerations. You certainly wouldn't want to hide out in Venezuela with its corrupt dictator Nicolas Maduro. You'd also need to consider crime rates. They can be very high in places. Chile is not one of them. There are about 37.55 crimes per 1,000 people in Chile. That's elevated compared to other parts of the world, but it's 10% lower than the United States. Better, there are only 1.7 murders per 100,000 people here, compared to 5 in the United States. Want some other positives? Chile and the United States are generally aligned. There's even a joint base, the Fort Aguayo Naval Base in Concon, but it's a training facility for peacekeeping exercises, not a valuable military target. What's more, Chile's geography makes it almost perfectly suited for surviving World War III. Its coastline of almost 4,000 miles, 6,400 kilometers, is at the southwestern edge of South America. It's almost impossibly far away for any of the major warring powers to reach. The profile gets even better. Chile is sort of like a much more modest version of South Korea. It's emerged from a checkered history of coups and dictatorships to be a vibrant democracy, and corruption here is fairly low. It's ranked 32nd out of 180 on Transparency International's Corruption Perceptions Index. That's higher than any other country in South America except Uruguay, and only 4 spots lower than the United States. Chile is also a fairly well-developed country, with a GDP per capita of $16,700 in 2024. High by the standards of its region. Higher than China, too, for that matter. What can you survive on out here? Plenty of fruit, like grapes, apples, and kiwi fruit. There's also wheat, corn, potatoes, and tomatoes, and Chile is one of the world's biggest exporters of ultra-nutritious blueberries. Cherries, too. Onions and wheat are also staples. Here's where Chile's extreme geography gives it another advantage. It can be so forbidding that common agricultural pests simply aren't a factor, so its farms are always productive. If you're looking for meat, other exported items include poultry, pork, and salmon, and Chile's long coastline pretty much guarantees an abundance of fish. Over 813 species available for small-time fishers to go and catch. The downsides? Chile's fisheries aren't what they once were. Overfishing has led to tighter regulations, which would probably be more important to follow in World War III. Chile also relies on imported energy. It's trying to take steps to be energy independent, with renewables making up 55.3% of its power generation in 2022, but it's not Iceland yet. The following year, it imported 62.3% of its total energy supply. You can live with blackouts, but Chile is also a net food importer. Chile does a really good job with the territory it has, but you can't overthrow nature. In 2022, only 1.7% of the country's territory is arable land. But the game is survival here. With global supply chains up in smoke, the import-export math will change as Chile wisely hoards what it has to itself. With a South American continent most likely to be untouched, markets should do the rest. So you can probably feel good about your choice to spend World War III at a place like Punta Arenas, the world's southernmost city with 100,000 inhabitants. There's sheep and cattle to go by here too, just in case you were worried. So sit back and relax on this gateway to the Antarctic, thousands of miles away from the bombs and the rockets and the bullets, as long as they're not nuclear, that is. In a nuclear winter, you wouldn't be safe, no matter how remote a place you could find. Thanks for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you want to see more videos like this, then please consider subscribing and turn on notifications. It really does make a difference. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time on MapPack. Ghost towns, military zones, self-proclaimed kingdoms. These are 50 places that technically don't exist, but totally do. Starting off with number 50, the Korean Demilitarized Zone. The Korean Demilitarized Zone, or DMZ, is one of the most dangerous parts of the world, but the name is pretty wrong. It's the most heavily armed piece of land on Earth, and a new war could break out at any moment. But there's something else peculiar about it. On the North Korean side, there's a village called Kijongdong, full of brightly painted buildings. This so-called peace village was built as a nice-looking place just after the war, trying to entice Southerners to defect. But it turns out that the windows are painted on too. No one actually lives there, it's all propaganda. Number 49. Fleury-de-Vent-Douaumont, France. Fleury-de-Vent-Douaumont in northeastern France has a population of 0. About 400 people used to live there, but the town was destroyed in 1960 during the Battle of Verdun. Even over a century later, it remains unpopulated, but it stayed as a legally incorporated town though. By law, it's recognized as a village that died for France. It's a tourist site that hosts the Verdun Memorial, reflecting on the horrors of the Great War. Number 48, Oradour-sur-Glane in France. Another village in France saw the worst of another war, and it wasn't even on the front lines. Far away in Aquitaine is Oradour-sur-Glane, but it's actually 2 villages now. The one you might find on a map is the modern village, but the earlier one is nearby, in ruins. On June 10, 1944, the Nazi Waffen-SS rounded up and murdered 642 people in this village before wrecking it. Only a handful survived by playing dead. Oradour-sur-Glane was rebuilt after the war, but President de Gaulle ordered that the ruins of the old town remain on the original site as a memorial for the victims. Number 47. Varosha, Cyprus. There's a similar place to the Korean DMZ on Cyprus, but it's a different kind of cautionary tale. Varosha was once a luxury retreat for the rich and famous. Elizabeth Taylor or Brigitte Bardot would stroll around these parts. The resort town is still there, but as a decaying ruin. Things changed dramatically when Turkey invaded Cyprus in 1974. The fighting forced all 15,000 residents out, and they've yet to return because their town had the misfortune of being behind the lines. A small part of Varosha was only opened to tourism again in 2017, but you won't find any A-listers there now, for understandable reasons. Number 46. Wittenoom, Australia. War isn't the only thing that can wipe a town off the map. If you ever find yourself in Wittenoom in Western Australia's Pilbara region, you'll notice something peculiar. All mentions of this town have been wiped from the signs. But it's not because there's nothing left. It's just that Australia doesn't want you going there. This place used to be an asbestos mine, so the toxic fumes spread everywhere. It was evacuated in 1978, although a few people remained into the 2000s. The gem shop was still open in 2013, but is such a treasure worth risking your life? Number 45. Gilman, Colorado. Gilman was once a boomtown, with mining for gold, silver, lead, and zinc starting in the 1870s. This work continued all the way to 1984, when the mines were allowed to flood. It was a disaster. Toxic substances like lead, arsenic, and cadmium contaminated the soil and water leading to the Eagle River. The EPA had no choice but to close and evacuate the town. The abandoned houses are still in good condition though, rousing the interest of photographers who dare to go. Number 44. Bodie, California. The most famous boomtown of the gold rush period might be Bodie, California, founded in 1876. Its population soared and it became a symbol of the Wild West, with accounts of Western-style shootouts. But as the gold craze died down and harsh winters hit, the town began to dwindle. Bodie was described as a ghost town by 1915 and the last residents left in the late 1940s, but the town is remarkably well preserved almost 80 years later. That's because there are park rangers that keep everything maintained. You can still find it on Google Maps because it's a state park. Just don't expect to find any locals. Number 43. Centralia, Pennsylvania. Centralia still exists in the United States Census, but it has no zip code and you can't buy any property there. Why? Because there's a fire burning underneath it. This place was once a coal mining town, but in 1962 a fire in the mine broke out that will burn for at least another 250 years. The town was abandoned and property seized by the state due to dangerous carbon monoxide levels coming out of the ground. Existing residents were allowed to stay for life if they wanted. By 2020, only 5 remained. Number 42. Arkwright, England. Arkwright in Derbyshire, England, technically still exists. It's just somewhere else. All that remains is a brick pillar and a plaque. It was once an industrial center with coal mining as its backbone. Unfortunately, that led to the discovery that the ground beneath the town was leaking methane gas at dangerous levels. The entire population was relocated in 1988 to safer ground outside the methane area. New Arkwright was finished in 1995, and the old town was demolished. Though, if you're willing to risk going, you can mark out some landmarks that vegetation has now reclaimed. Number 41. Pripyat, Ukraine. The Chernobyl meltdown in Ukraine is the most infamous artificial disaster of recent history, and near the epicenter is Pripyat. There were once 49,000 people here, but they all had to be evacuated. Some of them were exposed to radioactive fallout for 36 hours and suffered severe health effects. The buildings remain standing, but nature is rapidly reclaiming the area. You might still find it on a map, and it's safe enough to travel through if you don't plan to stay for long. But it won't be habitable again for up to 20,000 years. Number 40. Beichuan, China. We've seen man-made disasters up to now, but maybe no place has suffered worse luck in recent times than Beichuan, China. It was right on the fault line of a devastating 8.0 earthquake in 2008. At the tragedy's height, 2 school buildings collapsed that resulted in the deaths of 1,300 middle school students. The city suffered aftershocks of up to 6.1 on the Richter scale. Finally, there was a huge flood in 2013. The city was abandoned and is now considered a historic site for New Beichuan, where the people now live. All the old buildings are still there, though, in ruins. 80% of them were destroyed. Number 39. Billingsgate Island, Massachusetts. Given its Cape Cod locale, Billingsgate Island in Massachusetts made for a perfect fishing village. But in 1855, a storm came that was so powerful it cut the island in 2. Things didn't get easier from there. Even a 1,000-foot seawall failed to keep back the forces of nature, and the final residents left in 1912. You can still visit it, but this place is so obscure that you won't even find it on Google Maps. Number 38. Fordlandia, Brazil. Sometimes it's not a disaster that creates a ghost town. The dreams of eccentric millionaires can too. Fordlandia in the state of Para, Brazil is an example of this. Work began there in 1927 to supply rubber to the Ford Motor Company. But it was more than that for Henry Ford. He wanted a new kind of city with the same values he credited with making him so successful. But Fordlandia was a disaster from the beginning. The rubber trees couldn't survive in this environment. The economic rationale was soon gone, and when Ford's grandson, Henry II, took over the company in the late 1940s, he cut the albatross it had become, and the town fell into ruin. It's seen a boom in recent years, though, going from less than 100 people to 3,000 by 2017. Number 37. Santa Claus, Arizona. We've all heard of Christmas in July, but what about in the desert? Santa Claus, Arizona was founded in 1937 by the self-proclaimed biggest real estate agent in California, Nina Talbot. She had dreams of turning it into a resort town benefiting from the traffic on Route 66, but things didn't go as planned. Talbot sold the site, and no other developer got it far off the ground either, although the Christmas Tree Inn was praised. It was most popular as a destination for letters to Santa, rather than for tourists, and it closed for good back in 1995. Number 36. Paradise and Winchester, Nevada. The Vegas Strip is famous for its casinos, hotels, and glittering lights, but it's not actually part of Las Vegas. It's in the unincorporated towns of Paradise and Winchester, Nevada. It's not for lack of trying, though. Las Vegas officials have tried to fold the Strip into the city limits for years, but casino magnates, Clark County voters, and even the Supreme Court of Nevada said no. The most recent attempt came in 2009. It probably won't be the last. With so much money out there, there's a good incentive to keep trying. Number 35. Gibsonton, Florida. According to the 2020 census, Gibsonton, Florida is fairly sizable with about 18,000 residents, but it was founded with a peculiar flavor. Its first settlers were called the Giant and his wife, the Half-Woman. Gibsonton was where all sideshow performers would spend their winters. It's not quite like that anymore, but you might still find a sword swallower here and there in this unincorporated community. Number 34, Whittier, Alaska. Far to the north is the city of Whittier, Alaska, and it's known as the town under one roof. Almost all of its 200 residents live in the 14-story Begich Towers, once an army barracks that's become a self-governing municipality. The post office is near the entrance and the police station is right down the hall. It might be a little cramped, but the views of the bay are apparently to die for. Number 33, Colma, California. Colma, in San Mateo County, California, is a real city of the dead. There are 1.5 million graves that you can find in rows upon rows. This is where most San Francisco residents will find their final resting place. If you're comfortable with that though, the 1,500 living people here say the town is pretty nice. Its motto? It's good to be alive in Colma. Maybe that's just a way to put on a brave face. Number 32, Bolinas, California. The Bay Area has more than one odd suburb. Bolinas is 12 miles, about 20 kilometers from San Francisco in a straight line, but the locals don't want to be known. They tore down road signs pointing the way to their village with such fervor that the county decided it wasn't worth the money to replace them anymore. It became a haven for hippies and others trying to get out of the mainstream, but it couldn't stop the almighty dollar. The area is hot property and real estate prices soared anyway. Airbnb came along and made things even worse. The combination of high-priced properties and soaring rents has pushed many of the original inhabitants who failed in their quest to stay off the grid by not incorporating. Number 31, Slab City, California. Slab City is located in Imperial County, deep in the Sonoran Desert. The name comes from the concrete slabs of Camp Dunlap, a World War II Marine Corps base. There's no taxes here. There's also no electricity or even trash pickup. Some call it the last free place. Others call it an enclave of anarchy. Squatters, survivalists, off-the-grid artists, and homeless people are the types you might find here, people who want to live beyond the mainstream. Number 30, Hell, Michigan. Some places can be hell to live in. Literally. Hell, Michigan is an unincorporated area that has no zip code of its own. It's part of the town of Pinckney's code. According to legend, it got its name in the 1840s, when one of its founders said it could be called hell for all he cared. The name actually stuck, and the town has embraced it. Weddings can take place in Devil's Church, and there's even a fake university called Damnation. Damn you. Get it? Number 29, Miracle Village, Florida. There's a remote place in Florida that's sort of the opposite of hell, at least in name. This is Miracle Village, a small, unincorporated community of 54 duplexes and 6 family homes. A former prison minister named Dick Withrow founded it in 2009 as a place for these people to try and get back on their feet after serving their time. He and his ministry have final approval for who lives there. Number 28, Nameless, Tennessee. Now take out a map of Tennessee and you might see something unusual. Nameless in Jackson County. The legend is that when its residents applied to a U.S. post office, they left the name of the place blank. The federal government stamped Nameless on it and sent it back, which is how the place got its name. If you do come across it, there's not much to do. The 2-room elementary school has been closed since the 1960s, and the general store is now a museum. Less than 100 people live here though, and they say there's no place like Nameless. Number 27, Burnt Corn, Alabama. It's one thing to say that something has no name, but a name like Burnt Corn? Really? It actually does exist, but only sort of. This place is so unusual that it only appeared on the US Census once, in the 1880s, so we don't know how many people actually live there. The post office was closed in 2002, and there's only an unofficial website. All we really know is that it was named after the 1813 Battle of Burnt Corn between the US Army and the Red Stick Creek tribe, which didn't take place there. Rather, it happened in Escambia County, to the south. Number 26, North Oaks, Minnesota. Farmhouses are some of the only things in North Oaks, Minnesota that you'll ever see. The town had about 5,100 residents in 2023, and they don't necessarily want to be marked on a map, and they really mean it. In 2008, the community threatened to sue Google for trespassing to get images for its Street View software. It could do this because the town is entirely privately owned, either by the North Oaks Homeowners Association or the North Oaks Company, and they're serious about keeping unwanted visitors out. Number 25. Asta Zero, Sweden. If you visit Asta Zero in Sweden, you might think you're walking the streets of New York. It is the world's most advanced testing ground for self-driving cars, and it's all owned by Volvo. It has stores, a replica of the Arc de Triomphe, and even Harlem. There are even cyclists for the cars to share the road with and avoid. It's best that accidents happen in a fake place rather than a real one. Number 24. End City, Michigan. There's a much smaller fake town across the Atlantic. It's only 32 acres, 13 hectares, and it looks remarkably like the University of Michigan at Ann Arbor campus. This is Em City, founded in 2015. The campus mock-up is supposed to test self-driving vehicles too. That's why there are streets, intersections, railroad crossings, parking spots, anything you can find in urban or suburban America. Just don't expect any mail in any mailboxes you come across. Number 23. Fort Irwin, California. There are more secret fake cities that have serious purposes. Fort Irwin in California is bigger than the entire state of Rhode Island. Troops spend up to 3 weeks here before they're deployed. It simulates urban combat closely. That's why there's more than one fake city inside. Some of the facilities resemble buildings in Iraq, and since it takes place in the scorching Mojave Desert, it's a good preview of what troops might expect on the battlefield. Number 22. Agloe, New York. Agloe might be the strangest place on this list, as it's the one that started as fake but became real. In the 1930s, the executives at General Drafting, one of the big map-making companies at the time, created a map with a fictitious town based on their initials. Why? Well, to root out copyright infringers. Naturally, Agloe appeared on a map made by a competitor, Rand McNally, but there's an irony here. When Drafting threatened to sue, Rand responded that a general store was indeed now at the place the map indicated. The store went out of business shortly afterward, but it was enough to fend off the lawsuit, and Agloe continued on. It appeared on Google Maps as recently as 2014, but now the town that started as fiction and became real is gone again, though it still attracts curious folks interested in urban legends. Number 21. The Mars Desert Research Station in Utah. The Mars Desert Research Station in Wayne County is as close as you can get to living on the Red Planet without leaving Earth. It's privately owned, run by the Planetary Society. How can you survive with no oxygen in the air and create a self-sustaining colony with all the essentials like food and water? That's what the scientists here have been trying to do since the early 2000s. It might not be an incorporated town, but it's still visible on Google Maps. Number 20. The Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus. Sometimes there are entire countries that technically don't exist and might not be found on a map, but they're still there. Remember Varosha? It's behind the UN buffer zone in the place called the Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus. You won't find it listed on Google Maps though, because only Turkey recognizes it. Sure, the buffer zone is there, but a glance makes you wonder what it's protecting. Number 19. The Republic of Abkhazia. Look closely at Google Maps and you'll see a dotted line separating Georgia's mainland from its northwestern region. This is supposedly the Republic of Abkhazia. Russia carved it out during its invasion in 2008, but very few other countries recognize it. Number 18. South Ossetia. There's another dotted line just a little further east in Georgia. That's South Ossetia. Same deal with Abkhazia. Only a few countries recognize it, but with Russian troops to back up the carve-out, Georgia doesn't have a lot of options. Number 17. Transnistria, Moldova. You might have heard of a place called Transnistria. Well, you won't find it on Google Maps. It's not even called Transnistria in the search. But it is a very real place. Russian troops have made that clear since 1990. It's been a frozen conflict zone ever since, but that's not the only thing that's frozen. If you get in, you might think you stepped back in time to the Soviet Union. Number 16. The Republic of Somaliland. Somalia is also a place that's been in conflict for a long time, and part of that legacy is this place on its northwestern extreme, the self-declared Republic of Somaliland. It's been governed democratically since 1991, but no other country or international organization recognizes its independence from Somalia. You can still go there though, but it can be dangerous unless you're part of a guided tour. Number 15. Ladonia, Sweden. Somaliland does its own thing, but so does Ladonia in Sweden. It's less than a square mile, 2.5 square kilometers, and located in Kullaberg Nature Reserve. The controversial artist Lars Vilks created the sculptures Nimis and Arx here, and around them a microstate. Nobody actually recognizes it, obviously, but the sculptures are still there. Vilks himself may have died in 2021, but Ladonia claims almost 29,000 citizens from over 50 countries spread around the globe. It's even hosted microcons, conferences for micronationalists. Number 14. Užupis, Lithuania. The neighborhood of Užupis in Vilnius, Lithuania, sees itself as the country's artistic beating heart, so much so that it has its own constitution as the independent Republic of Užupis. It's less than a half square mile, 1 square kilometer, but has a president, navy, and currency. The constitution is on display on plaques along Paupio Street. Oddly, it calls for people to not fight back, but also not to surrender, and that everyone has the right to have no rights. You can see why the independent republic started as an April Fool's joke. Number 13. The Principality of Sealand. The Principality of Sealand in the North Sea rests entirely on the World War II-era sea fort of HM Fort Ruffs. Since it's a man-made structure, it has little chance of being recognized internationally, but the UK government has been permissive. If you want to visit it, you'll need to talk to the Bureau of International Affairs. Number 12. The Sovereign State of Forvik. Located off the coast of the Shetland Isles in Scotland is the Sovereign State of Forvik. In 2001, a sailor named Stuart Hill was shipwrecked during his attempt to circumnavigate the British Isles, earning himself the nickname Captain Calamity. He didn't wait for rescue though. He just said that the 2.5-acre, 1-hectare island he was on was its own independent country that he called Forvik. The basis of the claim was that it wasn't part of Britain, but still somehow part of the Norse Empire. It led to a long series of legal battles, as Hill said he was trying to inform Shetlanders of their ability to assert their legal rights and secede from the UK. He was convicted in 2011 of road traffic offenses for failing to register his vehicle or pay road taxes to the UK. It turns out the courts didn't buy his argument that Forvik was a free state, but he's still around, keeping Forvik as alive as he can. Number 11. Thalassa. On December 26, 1979, 14-year-old Robert Ben Madison declared independence for his second-floor bedroom in Milwaukee. He called it Thalassa, and just like that, a new nation was born. Since then, it's grown into one of the most elaborate micronations on Earth. Thanks to pieces in the New York Times, people started to become aware of the burgeoning country. Today, the Kingdom of Thalassa continues to thrive with hundreds of global citizens, its own language, a full legal system, and a detailed and troubled history. As of 2023, there were 157 proud Thalassans. Number 10. The Republic of Molossia. Found in the Nevada desert, the Republic of Molossia is a 9.8-acre, 4-hectare property where President Kevin Baugh permits visitors on certain days between April and October. Tourists can go through the various government offices, look at the Republic's currency, and learn about the naval fleet, even though the coast is hundreds of miles away. Just don't show up unannounced. Number 9. Bir Tawil. If you're brave enough to face the harsh desert, you can go to Bir Tawil. It straddles the border between Egypt and Sudan, but curiously, neither country claims it. Nobody would actually want to live there, so maybe it's more trouble than it's worth. But if you want to visit maybe the last truly stateless place on Earth, this most extreme of places could be for you. Number 8. The Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic. Across the continent lies the Western Sahara. As you'd expect, not many people live here, but it's still the subject of a territorial dispute. Most countries recognize it as part of Morocco, but the self-proclaimed Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic actually controls it. Like in similar cases, there's a dotted line on Google Maps, with Western Sahara listed below it. If you're brave enough to go, you might find it as one of the best kiteboarding places on Earth. Number 7. The Murawari Republic. The self-proclaimed Murawari Republic is located in Australia. In 2013, it declared its independence over a triangular-shaped territory that stretches over 6,300 square miles, 16,000 square kilometers, and straddles the border between Queensland and New South Wales, Australia. No country recognizes it, but the Murawari people claim it as a homeland. The fact that most of the inhabitants are non-Indigenous could be a problem, though. Fortunately, it's safe to travel to. Australia's Kulgoa National Park is there, so you might as well stop and visit. Number 6. The Principality of Seborga. Ever heard of the Principality of Seborga? Back in the 1960s, Giorgio Carbone, the former head of a flower growers co-op, dug into the town's history and noticed something strange. Italy unified in the 1800s, but Carbone couldn't find any proof the Seborga was ever officially sold to the Kingdom of Sardinia in 1729, like Italy claims. He declared himself His Tremendousness, the prince of a forgotten micronation, and set out to build the next Monaco. He sadly passed away in 2009, and Italy still controls this place, but the dream lives on. Number 5. Christiania. Europe has its own sort of slab city, and it's right in the middle of things. Christiania was founded in 1971 by hippies squatting in a former army barracks. For a long time, the place balked at obeying any rules. It has its own flag after all. But it began to buy the land it was on in 2012 as mandated by the Danish government. It was infamous for its cannabis market until 2024, when it was forced to shut down after deadly shootings in 2016 and 2023. It was physically dug up to prevent any such incidents from taking place again. Maybe that's why you won't find Christiania as anything other than a neighborhood in Copenhagen on Google Maps. Number 4. Greenland. Greenland has all the things you think would be required to exist as a recognized country: a large landmass, a sparse but stable population, and a free, democratic government. But it was a full part of Denmark until 2009, when Copenhagen granted it self-rule. It's still not recognized by any UN member state, though, despite the Greenlanders' desire for independence. Disputes about its status as the Arctic ice melts and new trade routes open up could be interesting. Number 3. Donetsk, Ukraine. Donetsk is the capital of the so-called Donetsk People's Republic, which broke away from Ukraine with Russian support in 2014. It was supposedly annexed by Russia in September of 2022. Almost all UN member states recognize it as Ukrainian territory, though. You might have been able to travel here once and see what the fuss was about, but since it's now one of the most dangerous places in the world, it's probably not a good idea. Number 2. Luhansk, Ukraine. Luhansk broke away from Ukraine in 2014 as well, becoming the Luhansk People's Republic with Russia's backing as well. Russia recognized it just before it invaded Ukraine, and then claimed full annexation of it in 2022. Some sources claim that Luhansk and Donetsk became North Korea-like statelets once the full-scale invasion of Ukraine began. So while you won't find this place on any map, other than a Russian one, you should avoid it, because these things really are happening. And finally, number 1. Taiwan. By far, the most important place that often gets left off a map but totally exists is Taiwan. Most countries don't recognize it and leave it off their official maps to avoid angering China, but China doesn't control it, and the 23 million people that live here don't want it to. China does, though, and because this place is the heart of the world's semiconductor industry, everyone has a lot to lose. This is far more than a dispute about what exists on a map. The world's balance of power is at stake here. Thanks for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you want to see more videos like this, then please consider subscribing and turn on notifications. It really does make a difference. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time on MapPack. Where are the worst places to live in the US? It's no secret that some states are faring better than others, but today we'll reveal which states are going downhill and fast. To avoid an opinionated list for the most part, we'll take a look at the most recent quality of life ratings and other considerations published by reputable sources to get a clear picture of who truly is the worst of the worst. Think you know which states will make the list? It might not be as clear as situation moving forward, much like our next state that's facing some major problems. Alaska. Alaska is famed for its massive wilderness reserves, cold weather, and natural beauty. It's also famed for its oil industry. Alaska's economy relies heavily on oil as a major export of the state, as it produces and sells billions of barrels of oil annually. According to one projection, oil prices may suffer in 2024, with a projected decline of $8 per barrel compared with the Department of Revenue's forecast from fall of 2022. The state is also expected to have decreased oil production at a projected rate of 7,200 fewer barrels of oil each day. This could reduce the state's unrestricted general fund revenue by $679 million this year. All this oil production has and will continue to have catastrophic effects in the last frontier. As changes in ocean conditions, permafrost, air temperatures, sea ice, and precipitation become more prominent as a result of the changing climate, Alaska's infrastructure is likely to suffer, especially in rural areas. The livelihoods of Alaskan people may be seriously threatened in the coming year and beyond, contributing to the collapse of major fisheries, undermining existing jobs and indigenous ways of life, impacting agriculture and mariculture industries, and creating job insecurity. Alaska's education system also doesn't have a positive outlook. In fact, ranked 46th in education, Alaska has just 11 or 17.2% of its 64 ranked schools falling in the top 25% of schools in the nation. Alaska's decline is not limited to its poor education system, however. Its population has been struggling for years now. Though Alaska's population has mostly increased by some amount each year, the rate of change has been stagnant since 1995. Beyond this, the state has experienced school closures as a result of declining school-age residents and enrollment. This may be related to the impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic. Clearly, the aftermath of the pandemic continues to adversely impact Alaska's population. Not only that, but the rate of natural increases in population, that is, the births in Alaska, recently reached the lowest they have been since the 1950s. The age of the average Alaskan has also risen, with older adults over the age of 71 years old are now at an all-time high, making up over 7% of the state's population. Alaska is also rated as the 39th best state in the country for families, which, while not the worst, isn't something to brag about. In fact, one study ranked Alaska as the worst nationwide in terms of both quality of life and climate and weather. Alaska also comes in at 42nd in the country for unemployment and 40th for safety and crime rates. With so many factors working against the state, it's clear Alaska is on the decline. Would you dare to move to Alaska? Coming in next, New Mexico. New Mexico is considered the worst state in the country to raise a family, which doesn't look positive for the state's prognosis right off the bat. New Mexico is ranked 37th in the country in terms of family fun and 49th for health and safety. New Mexico is ranked worst in the country for crime rates and safety according to another ranking. The Land of Enchantment is also ranked 46th for socioeconomic rank. None of these factors are favorable for an improvement in New Mexico in the years ahead. New Mexico's employment and workforce development don't have a positive outlook in the upcoming year either. New Mexico was recently said to have 116,000 fewer workers than the national average for a state's workforce participation. Since 2010, an estimated 20,000 workers have left the state of New Mexico and have not been replaced. In terms of economics, New Mexico clearly doesn't fare too well, and this may only continue to decline in the years ahead. For several years in a row, New Mexico was among the top 3 states with the highest poverty rates. New Mexico also had the 3rd highest child poverty rate in the nation, with 23.9% of children living in poverty, and the 3rd highest senior poverty rate at 12.8% in 2021. Not only that, but the state is considered to be among the worst in terms of education and childcare. One rating scale ranks New Mexico as the 47th in quality of education. In fact, New Mexico is thought to be one of the worst in terms of student standardized test scores, with New Mexico students on average scoring at or near the bottom. While this isn't a great metric for measuring all learning and education quality, the fact that New Mexico students overall have shown minimal improvement in proficiency since 1998 is not promising for the future of education in the Land of Enchantment. The high rates of poverty and low levels of proficiency within the education system of New Mexico are, perhaps unsurprisingly, linked. As of 2021, 28% of children under age 5 live in poverty, and 25% of children under 18 live in poverty. At the same time, 76% of fourth graders, that is nearly 3/4 of New Mexican fourth graders, and 79% of eighth graders were not proficient in reading at their grade level. Furthermore, over 1/4 of high school students in the Land of Enchantment do not graduate on time, and 12% of teenage children are not in school or working. What's more, almost 1/3 of adults in the state read at the level of a 5 to 7-year-old, though this number may be impacted by the number of immigrants in the state. Clearly, the deep-rooted generational impacts of poverty are significant in New Mexico. Beyond academics and income, drug use is another issue that plagues the state of New Mexico. Based on 20 metrics, including overdose rates and employee drug testing laws, New Mexico actually is the worst ranked for drug use. Surprisingly enough, drugs and alcohol can be at least partially responsible for all the 10 leading causes of death in the Land of Enchantment. This isn't to say that drug use definitively results in all of the leading causes of death, but they could be tied to drug use and alcohol use. For instance, chronic liver disease, cirrhosis, unintentional injury, and suicide may all be related to substance abuse, as can death from chronic respiratory diseases and heart diseases. Not only that, but New Mexico has one of the highest alcohol-related death rates in the nation. As of 2007, the economic cost of alcohol abuse in New Mexico cost the state more than $2.8 billion, including lost productivity due to illness and death, healthcare expenses, social welfare costs, and more. Clearly, New Mexico is unlikely to improve soon, but just wait until you hear which state is next. Arkansas. Another state fighting to stay afloat is Arkansas, also called the natural state. In recent years, Arkansas has been repeatedly reported to be one of the states with the highest rates of income inequality nationwide. In fact, studies show that Arkansas's richest residents, the top 5% of households, have average incomes that are 15 times greater than the bottom 20% of households and 5 times larger than the middle 20% of households. Not only that, without counting capital gains, the top 5% of Arkansas households reportedly receive 19% of the overall state's income. To illustrate that in dollars, the average income of the richest 5% is an estimated $259,930, while the poorest 20% average comes in at just $17,879. What's more, Arkansas has seen growing inequality since 1979, as the top 1% has seen income growth of 110%, while other households have had, on average, a growth of just 9% since 1979. This inequity extends to food insecurity as well. In Arkansas, there are an estimated 467,550 people currently facing hunger, of which 134,690 are children. That's 1 in 6 people facing hunger in Arkansas, and 1 in 5 children. In total, to meet the food needs of people facing hunger in Arkansas, those experiencing food insecurity would need a collective $262 million each year to meet their needs. One of the largest issues plaguing Arkansas has been tied to a rise in illegal drug use in the state as well. The state has one of the highest rates of violent crime in the United States, according to the FBI. In fact, by one rating system, considering several metrics like drug testing and overdose rates, Arkansas comes in at 7th in the nation. Arkansas's governor, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, has blamed crime in Arkansas on too relaxed penalties and prison overcrowding that has led to the release of some violent offenders before the end of their sentences. Health in Arkansas is a serious issue as well, as it's ranked 46th in the nation to raise a family in. At third worst in family fun and 42nd overall in health and safety, Arkansas is clearly not a place you want to be with your family in the coming year. There's a serious lack of access to healthcare in Arkansas as well, with, for instance, just 42 dentists for every 100,000 residents. Unfortunately, Arkansas also struggles from the brain drain, which is a phenomenon in which college students tend to migrate out of the state after graduation. An estimated 21% more of four-year college graduates leave Arkansas than remain, with most going to Texas, Tennessee, and Missouri. Retaining college graduates would improve the state's long-term economic well-being and would attract talent to its growing industries, which could be key to improving Arkansas's standing in the future. Unfortunately, with no indication of improvement this year, Arkansas remains on this list as one place projected to decline. But while this next state is known for its natural beauty, it's also known for its horribly low rankings. Is the beauty worth the trade-offs? Louisiana. Now heading to the Deep South, another declining state is Louisiana. Louisiana ranked 45th in the nation for families, while coming in at 46th for both health and safety and education and childcare. Louisiana's location along the southern coast has already subjected it to catastrophic loss as a result of tropical storms, like Hurricanes Katrina, Ida, Laura, and Rita in recent memory. Already since the start of 2024, Louisiana has been experiencing a property insurance crisis as hurricanes and storms have cost billions of dollars of catastrophe-related losses across the country. Some insurance agents suspect that property insurance in the state will improve as the year goes on. Still, with the constant threat of hurricanes and storms causing serious property damage in the Pelican State, the forecast in Louisiana doesn't look all that great. With declining temperatures and lesser rainfall associated in recent years, Louisiana's crawfish industry, which is significant for the state, may be seriously jeopardized. When there was recently an Arctic freeze that led to plummeting temperatures, bursting pipes, and impacted plumbing in Louisiana, the crawfish were too cold to move around, look for food, and end up in crawfish traps. Economically, the state has suffered as a result of the property damage, environmental disasters, and other factors impacting Louisiana in recent years. Louisiana is ranked as having the 47th strongest economy in the nation, outranking just a few other states. The state also ranks 48th in quality of education and 49th in safety and crime rates, which are undoubtedly tied to Louisiana's struggling economy. Childcare is an especially important issue related to Louisiana's decline. With only 76 licensed childcare facilities in a state consisting of 4.6 million people, quality of life and childcare are delicately intertwined in Louisiana. Based on data related to the standard of healthcare, job openings based on population, average real estate prices, salaries, and rates of violent crime, Louisiana is ranked as the overall fourth worst state to move to. Louisiana also had the second worst healthcare of all the worst-ranked states, according to the study. Not only that, but the state had the seventh lowest salary of all states, with an average annual salary just south of $51,000. Finding work in the first place can often be really difficult. In fact, one rating ranks Louisiana as seventh worst to find work in the United States. Beyond this, Louisiana is especially known for high crime rates, as high as 155,000 crimes per year, despite a moderate-sized population. The Pelican State's crime rate is as high as 33 crimes per 1,000 residents, or 29 crimes per square mile, compared with the national crime rate of 23.28 crimes per 1,000 residents. Not only that, but violent crime rates have unfortunately increased in the past few years. Some of the most prevalent crimes in Louisiana include organized crime, theft, and more. In New Orleans in particular, tourism-related crimes, including prostitution and DUIs, are more common. Rural areas don't fare much better. Louisiana also has very high crime rates in some of its small towns. Beyond this, Louisiana ranks 4th in the nation for its drug use problems. Perhaps for some of us, though, the good food and Southern hospitality are enough to save this state. Unfortunately, this next state, and the rest of the list for that matter, can't make similar claims. Kentucky. One major issue for Kentucky's outlook is that it's particularly difficult to find work in the state. In fact, one rating system estimates that Kentucky is the 9th worst state to find work in the entire United States. Not only that, but the Bluegrass State is considered to be 36th in the country to raise a family in. Kentucky fares especially poorly in terms of family fun and socioeconomic status, where the state is ranked 44th and 40th respectively overall. In fact, Kentucky is said to have the 42nd worst unemployment rate in the nation, and Kentucky's economy is 44th strongest in the United States, making the future of its economy look bleak. Kentucky was tied for the 26th worst schools in the country. Only 49 of Kentucky's 225 schools were ranked in the top quartile of schools in the country. Further, the quality of life in Kentucky is said to be 46th out of the 50 states in the U.S. None of this looks especially promising for the future of Kentucky. Kentucky is a state that is increasingly overwhelmed by smoking, obesity, and other public health concerns. It has the 6th highest rate of obesity in the nation, with a whopping 48.78% of its population being obese. Not only that, but Kentucky is known for its tobacco problem. 37.8% of cancer deaths in the Bluegrass State are attributable to smoking. With more than 17% of Kentucky adults smoking, nearly 5% of high school students smoking, and about 22% of high schoolers using e-cigarettes. These rates are much higher than those nationally, as just 11.5% of adults smoke nationally, less than 2% of high schoolers smoke on average, and an estimated 10% of high school students use e-cigarettes. Annually, nearly 9,000 deaths result from people's own smoking. That's not even counting secondhand smoke deaths. One study found that smoking is more deadly and costs more lives than alcohol, HIV/AIDS, car accidents, illegal drugs, murder, and suicide combined. Thousands more die each year from tobacco-related causes aside from smoking, like fires caused by smoking and smokeless tobacco use. Clearly, health impacts in Kentucky are widespread and show no signs of stopping. In recent years, the coal industry has begun to collapse in Kentucky, threatening a once major part of the Kentucky economy. Coal is generally disappearing from the energy sector as more renewable and sustainable forms of energy have begun to replace such polluting materials. In Kentucky, climate change has led to warmer winter nights, wetter land, and even floods. Not only that, other natural disasters are expected to become more frequent, which may lead to further economic inequalities, food shortages, mass migration, and potentially armed conflict worldwide. It's clear that the outlook for the coal industry in Kentucky is grim. The agricultural sector is also struggling in the Bluegrass State. An expected $200 million decrease between 2022 and 2023 took place, stemming primarily from lower profits from a number of products, including corn, soybeans, dairy, and tobacco. Kentucky is expected to have lower agricultural exports in the coming year, so the future doesn't look so bright for Kentucky on that front either. But hold on, there are more states that might be even worse off than Kentucky. Mississippi. A state that has seen its position on these kinds of lists for far too long is Mississippi. The state lags well behind its counterparts when it comes to economy and fiscal stability, ranking last or second to last in the provided lists. That reality is further cemented by the fact the state was ranked 47th for job opportunities. So if you find yourself in an unstable economic situation, you're going to have a tough time finding a job to get you out of it. Citizens of this state especially took notice of this, as well as other factors during the COVID pandemic, with Mississippi experiencing a roughly 100,000 net population loss in 2020 and 2021. While the population has begun to increase since then, it still hasn't returned to pre-pandemic levels. Mississippi is also ranked 49th for families, making it a difficult place to raise a family for those who have to stay. But perhaps a silver lining for all of this bad news? Mississippi has some of the more affordable homes in America, an expected side effect of being in a state where no one wants to live. But we're not finished yet. There's still a couple more places to explore. New Jersey. Though many of the states on this list are in the south or southwest of the country, you may be surprised to find New Jersey among those states in decline. For one, New Jersey is seeing a decline in its overall population. With more residents migrating to different states, New Jersey is also experiencing brain drain like we mentioned earlier. Between July 1st, 2021 and July 1st of 2022, New Jersey lost more than 6,000 of its residents. In the state's largest counties, outmigration was the most prevalent. Essex, Bergen, and Passaic counties have all been especially struggling as a result of these new trends. Because New Jersey is so densely populated, its lack of affordability is thought to be driving these trends. Many people have opted to move to less dense and more affordable areas. The high rates of poverty in New Jersey cause the state to be considered one of the worst off in the nation as well, with respect to socioeconomic status. Furthermore, New Jersey is ranked as third worst in the United States in terms of affordability. The high property taxes of the Garden State have also proven to be a burden for New Jerseyans. The statewide average property tax bill in New Jersey jumped by over $200 in 2022, reaching $9,490 annually. Median property taxes in New Jersey were the highest in the nation at nearly $9,000, which is more than $2,500 greater than in Connecticut, which takes second place. These conditions don't seem particularly conducive to economic improvement. In fact, New Jersey will likely be among the states most likely to decline in the coming year. Not only that, but New Jersey has been experiencing a subtle increase in its prison populations, with a growth of 1.2% between 2021 and 2022. Before this, for the decade prior to this increase, New Jersey, like many other states in the United States, had been seeing a drop in incarceration rates. The economic decline seen in New Jersey's lack of affordability and generally low socioeconomic status of its residents impacts other areas of the state's well-being as well. For one, New Jersey's infrastructure and roads have been facing severe strains in recent years. In fact, New Jersey is thought to have the second worst roads in the entire United States. Over 36% of New Jersey roads are rated as being in poor condition, much higher than the 13.8% of roads in poor condition nationwide. With all of this, the prognosis for New Jersey in the years to come doesn't look all that great. Perhaps the most detrimental and concerning factor impacting New Jersey's ranking as one of the most likely states to decline is centered around the prevalence of environmental contamination and Superfund sites in New Jersey. In the Garden State, there are many Superfund sites, which are places that are so contaminated that they pose a risk to human and environmental health. These sites include manufacturing facilities, processing plants, incinerators, and landfills, and mining sites where hazardous waste has been left. Superfund sites pose a high risk to life expectancy and disproportionately affect low-income communities. For instance, one study found that a Superfund site in an area with an average income below the median, which is $52,580 for reference, may lower life expectancy by as much as 7 months. There are studies showing that residential proximity to Superfund sites is correlated with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma in men, as well as childhood acute lymphoblastic leukemia. Flooding can also transport these contaminants, which exacerbates the risks posed by Superfund sites given the likely increase in flooding in New Jersey that will accompany climate change. Currently, New Jersey is listed as having 115 Superfund sites on the Environmental Protection Agency's National Priorities List. This is the highest of all 50 U.S. states, despite New Jersey being the fourth smallest state. With so many risks to human health, the economy, and infrastructure, New Jersey deserves its spot on this list. But believe it or not, things can get worse, and we have a couple more states to visit. West Virginia. West Virginia easily makes the list of states in decline. It's ranked 48th in the country overall, making it one of the worst states in the nation for families. West Virginia is the worst in terms of family fun, and 44th in terms of affordability. West Virginia is also known for its unemployment rates and the difficulty of finding work in the United States. In fact, one ranking system suggested that West Virginia is the 10th most difficult place to find work in. West Virginia ranks number 2 in the country for its rates of drug use. In fact, the opioid crisis runs rampant in the Mountain State. According to the CDC, fatal overdoses resulted in the loss of more than 1,400 people's lives in West Virginia in 2021. The state leads the nation in overdose deaths. This is a serious pandemic that has resulted in tragic loss of life in the state. West Virginia also quite literally takes the cake in terms of the highest rates of obesity in the country, with a stunning 51% of its population living with obesity. This means that at least half of the state has a body mass index of 30 or more. Furthermore, West Virginia's education system does not appear to be one of the top ranked in the nation. Only 13.8% of schools in West Virginia are ranked in the top 25% of schools nationally. The Mountain State is rated as 44th in terms of education and childcare, so the outlook is not all that good. West Virginia's education system is unlikely to improve much in the coming year. Its coal industry has long been a central aspect of the economy in the Mountain State. The state has also remained committed to coal despite alternatives like natural gas, and utilities are reluctant to transition away from coal, which is bad for the environment, people's health, and people's wallets. Because of this, West Virginians have dealt with heightened energy costs, paying an average retail electricity price 5 times higher than the national average, where low-cost alternatives like natural gas or renewables may be more common in other states. Between 2008 and 2020, West Virginia did not take on new technological breakthroughs for energy, but instead developed 3 new coal plants that led to energy costs rising higher and faster than in any other state. Many coal miners in West Virginia have faced serious consequences beside a rising utility bill. Difficult to manage illnesses like bronchitis, black lung, and cancer have impacted many, while others have dealt with workplace injuries. Perhaps if West Virginia was to transition to a more sustainable and affordable energy system, it could be on the rise. However, appearing to be just as stuck in its ways as ever, West Virginia is another to add to the list of states declining in the new year, much like this next one, and our final one. Oklahoma. One of the states with the worst outlooks is Oklahoma. Rated as 43rd in terms of quality for families, Oklahoma receives especially poor marks for health and safety, coming in at 47th. The Sooner State is also considered the 38th best in terms of family fun, so the prospects aren't that positive there either. In Oklahoma, there is one of the highest rates of drug abuse, ranked at number 9 in the country, and the state has the nation's second highest rate of people without health insurance. The Sooner State banned abortion in 1910, which was one of the strictest in the nation. Oklahoma law also makes performing an abortion a felony, which is punishable by up to 5 years in prison unless the procedure is needed to preserve the mother's life. Beyond this, Oklahoma comes in 4th place in the nation for obesity rates, with 49.52% of its population living with some form of obesity. Generally, Oklahoma suffers some of the most concerning health issues. Only 2.3%, or 9, of Oklahoma's 396 ranked schools were rated in the top 25% of schools in the United States. In fact, Oklahoma was ranked as the worst state in the country for education. Its schools are one source of the state's decline. For one, after the federal government allowed free meals at schools for 2 years of the COVID pandemic, schools have recently readopted paid lunches in Oklahoma. Now, many families have accumulated a lunch debt that is unaffordable to navigate. All these facts together support Oklahoma's spot on this list of states that are currently in decline. Of course, it's important to remember that a state being on this list doesn't take away from the unique cultures, family life, or other non-data-based reasons that lead people to choose or even love living in one of these states. So while this list takes a look at the numbers, it doesn't mean it's impossible to be happy in any of these states. But we'd like to hear your thoughts. Are there any states that should or shouldn't have been on this list? Let us know in the comments below. And if this video interested you, feel free to check out the real reason why America needs the South, or what certain states are doing that are ending up driving people away. Thanks for watching, and as always, take care out there.